Come on, Ruby. Come on, baby. Want some food? Want some food? Come on. Come on, girl. Come on. Hey. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Good afternoon, everybody. Or good evening, depending on where you are. Gotta feed the dog while we're talking here. Good afternoon. How's it going? There we go. We're gonna come back to the dog. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy Tuesday. It's cold here where I am today. Very cold. And in a little bit, I have to take the dog out for a walk, and you're going to see me. It's going to be chilly. I'll be switching hands a lot. I don't know. I just put a video out yesterday. It's so funny because when it comes to doing videos, you always get criticism from everybody. So I put the video out. I realized about a few hours after I put it out, I put the wrong date. I put January 5th instead of February. I just I mistyped the number and didn't catch it. And so I took the video down to fix it, and somebody says, "Oh, I see you took that stupid video down." It's just so funny to hear what people say, you know. Oh, I didn't hear about Mansoor. Oh, thank you. I didn't hear this, Cindy. I didn't get the loop yet. Somebody says, "So happy Mansoor is okay." Cindy, can you please, you want to come up and tell us? I'm so glad to hear that. That's beautiful. Somebody says he's back. That's great. Yeah, I'm just glad he didn't go to an Israeli jail. That would have been horrible. I was worried about that. That's great news. That's great news. That is great news. Somebody says, "How am I?" I would say that I'm, one foot in front of the other is my motto. And a lot of times I don't feel my best, but I do the best I can. Yeah, that's great to hear. Somebody says, "Look up his video." Okay, Cindy, thank you. I'll look it up. I've not been active on TikTok as far as watching videos for the last day or two. I watch one here and there. He was hiding in Khan Yunis. Okay. That's great to hear. I'm glad he's okay. That's all that matters. I don't care what happened. I'm so glad he's okay. There were people that showed him in one of those white, prisoner suits or whatever. I thought they said because he has alopecia or something like that. But do I feel like the longest running civil war in history gets zero attention in Burma? I don't think it gets zero attention, but I think it doesn't get the coverage that this is getting, because this is obviously, well, Burma is Myanmar, by the way. This is not Burma, but anyway, whichever you want to call it. Yeah, I'm just glad he's okay. That's what matters to me. That's beautiful. Yeah, that's a great. By the way, I know that the fact that the Israelis have been purposely targeting journalists, and so it's so dangerous to be a journalist in Gaza. It's like the least safe thing you can do. So, all the props in the world. I'm just so glad to hear he's okay. That's such good news. That is great news. Wow, we need as much good news as we can get, given all the bad news we've been getting, for sure. The obligatory, I have to say, please tap the screen for the likes, to get the likes up, and then please, this is the most important thing though, they're limiting the reach of pro-Palestinian content creators, as you probably know. So the best thing you can do is to invite others who don't get notified. So if you hold the screen down for like a half a second, it'll pop up a list of all of your mutuals, and then you can invite as many people as you want. The first thing I do when I go to people's lives, I go to Eric Warsaw's lives a lot. I just go, first I invite all my friends, and then I'll do 200. I do 200 hearts. That's my minimum that I do. So hopefully you can do the same. Yep. I think the algorithms have figured out ways to minimize our presence. All right, I just have to put this. So we have a few people already in the guest box. Wow, this is pretty fast. It's pretty fast. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up some guests early today. I may take some breaks to talk. I usually do a lot of monologuing. If you follow me for any time, I do about 20, 30 minutes of just yabbering. But today I'm going to bring up some guests. I'm very glad to hear that Mansoor's okay. And I'm going to mute each guest until we get the panel up, and then we'll start talking. We'll start talking about stuff. This is great, though. I mean, I'm so happy to hear that. I can't even tell you how happy I am. It's great.
Hi, Chip. How are you doing?
Okay, just one sec. Just want to make sure we get a few more people filtering in before we get into the audience chat. Just a sec, Chuck. Just a sec. Yeah, I normally keep people's mics muted and then take turns, just for those of you who haven't been on the panel before. what I've realized is I'd love to have everybody talk, but it just gets chaotic, especially if it's anything emotional. It gets nuts. Okay, and you know, life can be very unexpected. So I'm glad to hear some unexpected good news. Just when you think it's always darkest before dawn, they say. I think so. That's good. Thank you for sharing the live, everybody. I appreciate you doing that. The other thing is, I don't even know how this works, but there's a little orange heart at the very top. If you tap on that, I think you have to become like a member for 2 pennies. It requires 1 coin, which I think is equivalent of 2 American pennies. So it's very cheap, but then it allows you to get in and interact with a couple things, and it really changes the attention that gets put on these lives. So if you don't mind doing it, I did it. You only have to do it once with each person. You become like a member for 2 cents. So it's not a big deal. The good news is, Sergeant Moose, is that Mansour Shoman showed back up. He's okay. He was hiding in Khan Yunis and was not captured by the Israelis. He was just hiding from them, and he just resurfaced. And he said he couldn't keep his phone on because they would have been able to track him. So somebody says he put out a video, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. I have not seen it yet, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. But that's great news. Anytime there's a W in the W column, that's awesome. That is really good news. Yeah, I was going to talk about movement building today, but now that we heard that news, we can talk about that for a little bit. Yeah, that is great news. And remember, though, this is a good point that somebody raised this morning. I'm going to bring it up in this light. Many people who come to certain people's lives, they already agree with what's being said. They kind of, everybody's like, yeah. But really, the way this is won is by getting to the people who are not convinced or don't know about what's going on and reaching them and educating them and bringing them up to speed on the truth of the history of this thing. That's usually enough to give somebody enough to understand it. And I watched a video this morning about a young woman who went on what's called Birthright. If you don't know what Birthright is, it's a trip that's offered to young Jewish people in America who want to go visit Israel as a part of their heritage to learn about their culture and their religion and see the land and basically be given a spoon-fed a large dose of propaganda and all that stuff. And so she talked about her experience of she wanted to prepare for her birthright. And so what she did was she took some classes in her college before she went. And she said what she learned was like, what? All the same stuff I talk about a lot about. She took a course on Middle Eastern studies. She took a course on the Israel-Palestine conflict. And the stuff that she was told growing up in her household was nothing of what she learned in her school, right? And this is the problem. This is the problem. People get given a completely different version of reality, and especially in Israel. And you can hear it when we have conversations with folks who are pro-Israel. Listen, it's not their fault. You and I would probably be the same way if we had been. In fact, many of us are the same way on other issues because we're conditioned, at least speaking for the USA, we're conditioned to believe certain things. And things are hidden from our view that they don't want us to consider in forming our beliefs. And that's the propaganda system. It's either omitting key things or it's by confusing or obfuscating others. And that's what creates the belief systems that are conditioned. They want to manufacture certain beliefs. And there's actually a book written about that by a guy named Noam Chomsky called Manufacturing Consent. And it's very similar to the marketing industry. If you go study Edward Bernays, you'll see that it's the same type of conditioning. Use things like repetition and phraseology and catchphrases and stuff like that to create thought processes among people. It's very manipulative. Yeah, I did catch that interview with Dave. If anybody, so someone asked here, Seeking Balance. There's a great interview. If you haven't seen it yet, I just watched it last night. In fact, the whole thing. It's Dave Smith, who's a libertarian comedian / podcast host, who interviewed RFK Jr. And they talked about Israel. And I've never seen somebody so clearly mimic the talking points of all the Israeli Hasbara as Robert F. Kennedy. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's like they literally took the guy as a drone, programmed him, and then sent him in for these interviews and said, okay, press play. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Like every last talking point that you can ever imagine that's pro-Israel comes out of RFK's mouth. And the thing I don't like about that is that he's he prides himself on doing the research and reading these different pharmaceutical reports and understanding the studies and getting through the propaganda of the companies and then finding the truth about this, that, and the other. Same thing with pro-industry groups like, regulatory reform and regulatory capture in different industries. And then he gets to the bottom of it. He takes a very counter-establishment narrative because of what he finds out. Well, in this case, somehow he parrots the entire Israel version of this with seemingly doing none of that work. That's just what's so strange to me about Robert Kennedy. I can't understand. I think a lot of people like him because they like the idea of fighting back against these captured regulation systems and all these, corporate cronies in the pharmaceutical industry, which is a complete disaster. But they can't take him on this one issue. They can't accept the fact that he's this one-sided and just can't seem to see it for what it is. So therefore, he's now. Listen. I liked him a little bit. I mean, I liked the fact that he was at least somebody was saying something about this bullshit going on. But I just can't even. I mean, it makes me sick to my stomach just to even look at him now that I know what he thinks about Israel. It makes me totally disgusted. And I don't know. I have no idea. Somebody said, I wish Mossad would have been brought up. Oh, as far as asking him in the interview, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what role. I don't know what. Israel seems to have something on everybody. I think that's their whole thing. They use the honey trap thing where you get somebody to do something that's personally indulgent and then it's recorded or somehow held against you. And then, of course, they control you for life, right? And then they pretty much can tell you what they want you to say. And you pretty much it just gets built into you now. You just have to do it because it's just part of your new version of you. And then you go do it. That's my guess of what happened to him. Remember, when he was younger, he was heavily into, not that this is disparage his character. A lot of people go through this, but just to let you know how permissive he may have been in his choices, he was a huge drug addict. And so he's been through recovery, good for him. But during those years, he may have done things he otherwise wouldn't have done and maybe got caught up in some of this stuff. I don't know the history exactly, but the bottom line is it just seems very out of character with regards to his other advocacy. That's all I can say. Seems odd. All right, let's do this. We have a bunch of people coming in. Thanks for being here today. Let's bring up, I think the first person who was your favorite doc. So let's start with your favorite doc. How are you doing today?
Hello, Chip. How are you doing, my friend?
Good, thank you. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to share some news that was just reported by Anadolu news agency that more than 50 South African lawyers are officially taking the US administration and the UK into the International Court of Justice to assert their complicity in the genocide against the Palestinians. This is one thing that I think we need to know. I'll stay in the panel. I'll need to drop my kid to his class now, and then I'll come back in a sec.
Okay, thank you for telling us that. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great news. That's appropriate, right? Isn't that appropriate that those who are supplying the munitions and the political cover and the money should be called out as such and convicted, hopefully? And this is the thing I don't like about this is that it's jurisdiction as far as what can happen to somebody after they're convicted. In a fair world, all of these people would be behind bars, probably for the rest of their lives for doing things that are horrific. But in this world where the U.S. runs things, none of them will be held accountable, most likely, unless something changes where the U.S. is no longer able to control things. And that's a whole nother ball of wax if that happens. So then I think it was going to be Chuck wanted to say something. See what Chuck has to say here. Hey, Chuck, how are you doing? Chuck 187.
Yeah, what's up, Chip?
Hey.
Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm okay. How about you?
I'm doing good. Chip, I just want to say that I came across your page not too long ago. I've been listening to you. I'm a huge fan, so to say. I love your take on this issue and what you say. And I feel like a lot of the Zionists, they can't handle and constructive criticism, so they trying to dig up things about you that's not necessarily make any sense, if you get what I mean.
First of all, thank you. And by the way, it's normal when people get in the public eye and they start to speak out vociferously against a point of view that other people who don't want you to do that are going to try to find ways to delegitimize you or take you down, so to speak. So it is what it is.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you, what do you think is the solution in the issue of Palestine and Israel?
Oh, wow. Well, there's what would be ideal to happen and what is pragmatically going to happen. So let me tell you what would be ideal. What would have been ideal is before all these crazy settlements took place would be to probably delineate the territory based on the pre-1967 borders and allow Palestinians to have a state of their own between Gaza and the West Bank. That would have been fair and reasonable. And even though it's not fair what happened in 1948 and all the families who wouldn't be able to return, it would be a pragmatic solution to get past most of the historical anger and the injustices that took place. However, because of the settlements, it's sort of impractical. So much of the land has been sliced and diced and carved out, and the different areas where Palestinians lived are so disparate now that a contiguous physical state is just not possible given the logistics on the ground. And then you add in the fact that you have over 700,000 settlers. That's a huge number of people with lives fully entrenched in economies, and it's just probably not likely to change, which is unfortunate, but that's reality. So that's not practical. And then you have a one-state solution, which would probably be the fairest thing to do, because Israel claims that the territory that it claims it captured, I put that in quotes, during the 1967 Six-Day War, that if that's their territory, they should have to administer over it fairly and equally among everyone that lives there and give citizenship to everyone. But they want it both ways. They want to be able to occupy the territory, claim it's theirs, but then exclude people who are non-Jewish or Arab from the society. Now, there are people who are of Arab descent that live in Israel, but they don't live an equal life. People will say that they're equal under the law, and that may be true technically, but there's so many ways you can't count it on all your fingers and all your toes with how people who are of Arab descent don't get a fair shake in Israel. Much like in our country, we have some historical inequities like that here. So I don't think there is a solution, because if there was a one-state solution, there would be an immediate Arab majority. And in a democracy, that means that control would immediately shift away from a Jewish majority to an Arab majority. And I'm sure people who are in Israel don't want that to happen. So neither of those ways are going to be practical for the two reasons I laid out. So where does that leave things? Well, not in a great space. And at a minimum, they say, when you're in a hole, the best thing to do is first stop digging. I think the U.S. or others have to make a stand that first, no more settlements, no more dispossession of whatever land is left for Palestinians can occur. That's number one. Just like we need to see a ceasefire here in Gaza, first and foremost. And then I don't know how you unwind some of what's been done in a way that's fair and equitable. I don't know if it can be done. I do know this, though. Absent some sort of reasonable autonomy, dignity, and self-determination, any expectation for resistance to stop is ludicrous. So I think it's incumbent upon the Israelis, if they want peace, for them to come up with a way to get the peace they claim they want, which I don't believe they really do. I think they'd like to have peace in terms of it'd be nice to have, but their actions indicate otherwise, given they would have stopped doing what they're doing long ago, and they would have offered peace deals that had some real decency to the deals, and they haven't done that. So I hate to give that information. I think what that means in the end is, as it's always been to date, it's just more and more marginalization and suffering of Palestinians at the hands of the American-backed Israelis. So, sorry I don't have different. I'd like to give you a much different one. I wish I could. So thanks for your support, though, Chuck. I appreciate that very much. Thanks for being here. Freedom Philistine was here. I think one was here next. What's on your mind today?
Chip, how are you today, sir?
Okay, thanks.
It's an irony that these Israelis, they're pushing the narrative, and a lot of them actually know that they're lying, but they do it intentionally. Like I was listening to a live, I wouldn't even go up on their panel. I don't give them the time of day. Last night I was on Wayne's panel, and I showed that video I think I sent to you, but it's the first video on my profile. And they tried to bring up another video. They tried to lie about it. They brought up another video and tried to say it was the same video, but it was from 5/6/23 instead of 7/6/23. From 6/6/23. I'm sorry. Instead of October 7th, October 6th, 1923. I mean, in 2023. So, after when they couldn't, push their lies, they had Wayne's live shut down. Because
who's live? You said Wayne?
Yeah, he's that Asian guy that does the the thing between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Not familiar.
Oh, anyways, he was pro-Israeli. I don't know what his thing is. He's always siding with the Israelis, but you know, uh, I don't know if he's going to side with them after last night because they just brought down his live when they couldn't push their narrative of the lie because they sent the video to him to look at, and then they shut down the panel, so he wasn't able to respond because that video that I have surely shows exactly what they were doing, which gives me the intuition that it was an inside job on October 7th. They knew it was going to happen, but I believe that Israel unalived a lot of its own people to push the narrative further so they can go in and annihilate the people of Gaza because they want the land.
Yeah, it very well could be. That was my first thought that crossed my mind when I first saw this whole thing go down was, oh gosh, here they're going to go in and absolutely, RAPE Gaza in terms of their military and other actions. And it seems like that, I don't know how else you can conclude otherwise. And people say, how sick is that? They would never do that to their own people. I disagree.
One thing about me, Chip, is I've got a photographic memory. In other words, if I hear something on the news or it stays in my mind, and that's why when 9/11 happened, the first thing that came to my mind is that in June, a couple of months prior to 9/11, there was a report that came out on the news saying that 2 Global Hawk drones were missing from the Air Force arsenal. Now, how do you get 2 jet fighter sized drones to go missing from the arsenal? You know how secure the bases are,
Yeah.
all right? I mean, I live close to a base here in California, and if a bird flies over that fence, they know it, you know? So that was pretty peculiar. The way the buildings came down, that was very peculiar. Because if the buildings would have flipped from the top and the top half fell off, because I've been inside the World Trade Center, that thing is a football field in each direction, each building. It's 100 yards by 100 yards each building. So that's for that to come down the way it did. To me, it was after watching many, many, many Vegas implosions out here, and I've watched them live. So it's discerning to me because, like you, I'm a vet also of the U.S. Army. I was in the ordnance field. I was in small arms and tank turret and artillery repair. So, of course, we study a little bit about the explosive aspects of it, as you did as a tanker or tank commander. So I would be the guys that would be fixing the tank turret and fixing all the small arms and everything else and the artillery. So as I went up in the level of the battalion, I was a Zulu, which was a supervisor for all 3 MOSs. The 3 MOSs that fell under my line. So right away, I knew.
Jump in and tell the crowd. I know us Army people use a lot of abbreviations. MOS stands for Military Occupational Specialty, and when he says the 3 MOSs, the different specialties that he was in charge of making sure coordinated together and did the right things.
Correct. So that's one. Another one that caught my attention was the Murrah building. I was on my way home from work. I was with one of my good friends. I worked with him. We were painting houses, and I was on my way home, and he kept, when we heard the news, he was making fun of us, the Arabic people, because saying, "Oh, you guys just blow up everything and this and that and that and this." And on the way home, the only report that kept sticking in my head is the FBI have confirmed they have just removed the second and third boom boom, 500-pound boom boom, out of the Murrah building. They repeated that several times. And then the next day, they said that a truck full of manure blew up outside, fertilizer. So that didn't make sense to me. But what they did do is they put in a bill right after that occurrence called the Domestic Terrorist Act. In other words, that bill was to go against any civilian militia groups that were looking to overthrow the government, which is a constitutional right that we have when the government's no longer working for the people. And you took the oath, and so I'm sure you understand that part. We're to
Well, let me,
defend the Constitution.
let me jump in on that for 1 sec. So we have the right to assemble in public to redress grievances with the government. We don't have the right, quote unquote, to overthrow the government per the Constitution.
Okay, well, anyways, so what they did,
That's a
we
pretty
have the
important
right.
distinction, though. That's not an anyway. That's a pretty important distinction to make.
All right, so anyways, we have the right to defend the Constitution against
Enemies, foreign, domestic. Yep.
enemies, foreign and domestic. And can the government be a domestic enemy? Of
Absolutely.
course.
Absolutely.
So that was a threat to our civil liberties. That was one. And then they did the same thing right after 9/11 with the Patriot Act, which took away everybody's rights. They can take you, lock you up, hold you for up to 6 months without a lawyer, no charges or anything. So, that in itself is scary. So
Yeah.
that's why I was, but also the initial reports on 9/11 was that there was a van full of Israelis that was pulled over, the five dancing people up on a thing. The officer, I interviewed him. Also, he said that he had five Israelis. He had turned them over to the CIA, and then they were later released by the CIA. So they're all in cahoots, whether it's CIA, Mossad. I believe that our country, it was infiltrated a long time ago, in the early 1800s, or maybe earlier than that. But it was re-infiltrated right after World War II. With because right after the World War II, all of a sudden we had something called the SS, which is a secret service. So that's the scary part. And the CIA came into play and everything else after World War II. All these secret organizations that are controlling policies and stuff like that, which only gets us into trouble.
I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, Freedom. Thanks for being here today. I appreciate you.
No worries.
Thanks a lot. Have a good rest of your day. Yeah, when you swear an oath to the Constitution, just so you know how it goes, I swear an oath to protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. So police officers, military personnel, all elected officials, they all have to swear this oath. And the reason why they swear the oath to the Constitution or the concept behind the Republic is not so much because they want you to worship it, it's because the people can come and go. They can be good or bad depending upon the document. And the idea is that the document sustains, not the people. And so the problem in our country is that those who have been in charge, or who are in charge, have completely locked up every aspect of reform, including the idea of having redress for your government for the issues you have. We can go out in public and protest, but it's got to have a permit. and it's got to be at a certain place. And that's not disruptive in any way, so it doesn't really matter. There's no redress of grievances because you're doing it in a way that's not a nuisance in any way, shape, or form. That's the whole thing I've talked about. I want to talk about more because that's really what needs to change in the United States, in my opinion. And I'll just give you a quick example of how this is just not where people's heads are. So there's a guy named Tim who goes by the name of the Handsome Liberal, who I follow. He has a little daily, like a live like this. He does it on YouTube and TikTok, I think. And he's a very likable guy, and he talks what I call retail politics. He talks about the MAGA movement. He talks about Trump. He talks about, all the typical political stuff. So I called in to speak with him first time. I got through. He was nice enough to take me. And I laid out what I thought was the real power dynamic in the country. And when I got done, he says, okay, well, we need to get back down to earth here. Get away from la la land. So it's just the knee-jerk reaction from even people that are very politically versed and very knowledgeable, like Tim, is that we have to work within the system as it's laid out for us. We have to vote. We have to do it that way. And that's indicative of many, 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 many decades of conditioning and how the republic is set up. The problem is, what do you do then if the systems that are supposed to function to allow that redress of grievances doesn't work anymore, right? It just stopped working. It doesn't allow for any changes to take place. And therefore, what do? You can do more of that and hope that it gets better. The one chance that most people who see things from a more progressive standpoint, I guess, like who are fans of Bernie Sanders, who wanted to see things like universal health care and universal education and things like this, not crazy ideas, right? These aren't some radical thoughts. The Democratic Party completely marginalized his ability to run as a competitive primary candidate to Hillary Clinton because the establishment wanted Hillary Clinton. Why? Because she'll do their bidding unquestionably for as long as she would be in office. And she just happened to very unsurprisingly lose to Donald Trump, which certainly was a shock to most people. But there is no chance, even for somebody as mainstream as Bernie Sanders, who's been in the Senate for decades as an independent senator from Vermont. If he can't even break through the ranks to get to the chance to run for president, what is the chance of a third party person getting in? So most people don't really think this through. They just think, oh, well, if we just voted for the right people, or if we could just get a third party candidate going, everything. No, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be allowed to happen. So the question is, anything that's going to happen is going to get forced. It's going to be forced at the grassroots level onto the power structure. And it may not happen at all. But I think anything that will make changes, that can successfully change, is going to have to be forced. You can call it what you want. Some people call it a revolution. Some people call it a pushback. I don't think it should be called an overthrow, because I don't think that it's necessary to have a violent insurrection to have change take place. But it sometimes it does turn into that if things escalate the way that they can just in this conflict. Same thing. But I've been trying to figure out a way to make this work through voting for a long time, and I've tried organizing political campaigns. I've been a part of them, and it's an exercise in futility in my point of view. It's not that it's bad to vote. It's on the menu, but it's not going to solve any of the problems. It's not going to force people who are in charge right now to change any of their behavior. Why should they? They're sitting pretty. They're making a ton of money, and everything's going their way. Why would they want to change it? They're not going to let anybody come through the process they control to change it, of course. All right, so Nate's here, been waiting patiently. Thanks for waiting, Nate. How are you doing today?
Chip, thanks for having me up. I would like to bring up 2 points, and if you addressed it before, I apologize. I didn't hear you. But the first is in regards to territory. If you're born in Puerto Rico, are you an American citizen?
I know it's a protectorate, but I'm not exactly clear. I'd have to look it up.
How about if you're born in Guam, are you an American citizen?
I'm not sure. I know it's a protectorate. I'm not sure. I have to look it up.
So they're both territories. If you're born in Guam or Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, or whatever those islands are in the Pacific that we did some kaboom testing on, you're an American citizen.
Okay, thank you. However,
If you're born in American Samoa, are you an American citizen? And that answer is no. So if America Samoa has their own constitution, you're not Samoan and you're not American. You're a U.S. national.
Okay.
So if you are born in Gaza or the West Bank, you are an Israeli national, but they have their own government, just like American Samoa. So I think that's hard for people to understand. They have some understanding about what is Puerto Rico, but they don't have an understanding what is America Samoa. So in that case, according to you, America is an apartheid state because if you are born in American Samoa, you are a U.S. national and you're not an American citizen. And you're also not a Samoan.
Yeah, I think that may be a little bit of a stretch for the following reason: there's no military occupation in American Samoa, as far as I. Are there American troops
Sure,
controlling
there is.
movement of checkpoints? Are they checkpoints? Are there
Do
checkpoints?
you know that there's, well, in
Are there checkpoints and home demolitions and water supplies being cut off, and people being shot left, right, and center? Are people having, shit spray sprayed on their houses by the occupying forces? These are all differentiations that are much different circumstances than the simple, delineation from a legal standpoint that you're mentioning.
all right. Well, legally, they are U.S. nationals or they are Israeli nationals, but they would have their own individual rights because they have their own constitution, their own government. In regards to checkpoints, since you brought that up, are you aware that there's 200 checkpoints in America from Canada?
They're border checkpoints.
No,
yeah.
no, they're not border checkpoints. They're in Texas. They're in America, south of the Canadian border. You can go look it up on the internet.
They have immigration checkpoints that are further in off the border, but they're not checkpoints the way they're set up in the West Bank.
Okay. So, and then I did just join your live and didn't catch what you were saying, but if you could address those claims made about you as being dishonorably discharged or being.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is just garbage. I had somebody on a live basically
Yeah,
say
so
that
let me
that I didn't serve in the armed. I'll go through it. That I didn't serve in the armed forces. That I was using stolen valor. That I was dishonorably discharged. I was using fake accounts to spread anti-Semitic, anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ information. All this garbage, and that's just silliness. Listen, this is the kind of stuff that the attack machine brings on somebody who speaks out vociferously. That's absurd. First of all, if you're in the military, just to let you know, you have a service document called a DD-214. Your DD-214 lays out your duty stations, your training, the different schools you attend, and where you go to serve, and if you're in combat, where you get deployed to. So I have that document. It's sitting 5 feet from where I am right now, and it delineates from, I came in October of 1989, and I outpressed in March of 1992. Those are my service dates. I was in theater in the first Gulf War, December 24th, 1990, left May 17th, 1991. I don't have a good memory, but some of those dates, you can't get rid of certain dates in your mind. So I went to Armor Officer Basic School, which is where you go if you're going to be an armor officer, which means tanks. That took 4 months in Fort Knox, Kentucky. Then I attended Scout Platoon Leader course, which is a 6-day, sleep an hour a day course to test your battle readiness, which was terrible, by the way, but I got through it. And then I went down for a 3-week course called Airborne School down in Fort Benning, Georgia. When I got done with Fort Benning, Georgia, I then deployed to my duty station in West Germany, which was before the wall came down. And then about 7 months into my duty station, we went to war. We went to go to Operation Desert Storm down in the Persian Gulf. Then I came back, finished my tour. There was early outs offered. I got out at that point. That's my service. Got honorably discharged. Okay. So all this muck being brought up, that supposedly all this horrible stuff, it's all garbage. Now I will say this. I did have some tweets that I authored online that were in bad taste, that were using improper language. My Twitter account has since been taken down because I don't want to have any of that crap going around. It's garbage. And I've owned up to that. I've gone on lives for over 3 hours and I've talked about that. So the bottom line is this. You can, if you think I'm of poor character or low character or whatever you think I am, there's all sorts of other people on TikTok or online you can follow. And I God bless. If there's other people you identify with better, whatever, it's all good. So, no, I've never been to prison. I've actually admitted before that I've been to jail for a total of, let me do the math, 1 day, 2.5, about 6.5 days, 3 different times for small arrests regarding, let's just say, the stuff that Bob Marley used to be involved in, put it that way. And that is the truth. but I've never been to
Can I
prison.
can I stop you here? Sorry, you don't need
Yeah.
to tell people on the panel or in TikTok or
No, I
anything
don't. I'm an open book. I don't mind being honest because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
ashamed of
I mean
anything.
that's honorable thing from you to do, but you don't really need to get to do this. We all know this kind of people who come. They come only not after you. They come after everyone, and we know how big is their machine of propaganda and hasbara, and we know this is what they have been doing, and we should not be falling for this more and more. All we need to do is to just cut them off and continue our battle. We have a very strong, long battle to fight against these machines and their payers in the back. So relax, sit back, get back to your path, and let's discuss what's on the table today.
No, that's a good point. A good reminder. I think, maybe I'm one of the anomalies in the world, but I'm very much a transparent person. And I think we've all been through our bumps, this, that, and sideways. I appreciate the reminder. But I think it's okay to admit to it. We're all going to have falls. And if you have to constantly try to hide things you've gone through in life, I think that's not the best way to do it. I think you own it. You step up and say, yeah, I screwed up, or this is what actually happened. And I'm okay with all that. And I'm okay with being an imperfect vessel. But I think the messages that I bring and the way I conduct myself here is hopefully indicative of how I try to be most of the time. And for those of you who don't find that sufficient versus whatever you think you heard or know, then by all means swipe on. I understand. It's okay.
Yeah, none
So
my friend.
thanks for the reminder. Riri's coming up here. Thank you, Riri. And we have, I think is it Sam? No, Riri just dropped back. Sam's coming up. And let me see who else is here. Ali Khan. There we go. There we go. Sam, you want to come in, say something real quick?
Shall I talk, Chip? Assalamu alaikum. Good evening.
Hi,
Chip.
go ahead.
How are you?
We'll let Sam come in second. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, give me a minute, Sammy. I'm not going to be too long. Chip, we spoke the other night. You can't, like I said to you, whenever I see you, I try to follow you if I find you. Because I've got so many people that I'm following, I cannot always get other people to follow. So I have to delete some from somewhere. I don't know how. But anyway, I don't know what you were talking about. I came in quite late. But can you tell me, you must have heard the four apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John?
Mm-hmm.
Right. In what order are they coming? In what order did the Gospels come? Did they come like that or not?
That I don't know. I'd have to look it up. There's a lot of details in life. I just have to look up like everyone else.
No, that's fine. Because I found a contradiction, and I think Luke is the last one. The other three they got some discrepancy amongst the three books, but Luke is way off the pillar, way off the mark. He's the one that brings in the Trinity. The other three does not. And I was thinking you're quite knowledgeable, and I just thought I'd ask you or anybody that may be up here, in what order did the four Gospels come? The two, well, you know what I'm trying to say.
Well, what in terms of, let's say the order was whichever it was, what relevancy does that have to what other issues you wanted to discuss?
What it was is that
Sorry, I have to interfere again, Chip. I know this buddy. He came into the live the other night, and he does the same thing. He is a distractor. Sorry to say.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
From a distractor.
We're happy to have your comment. Happy to have you comment on the subject at hand if you want to talk about it. What's on your mind about what's going on with the conflict?
Who, me?
Yeah. What would you like to talk about that's not related to the order of biblical texts?
Okay. No, I mean, I was just asking you because, like I said to you, you're a nice person and you listen. And I just thought off the top of your head, if you knew. But anyway, I'll move on to the current conflict. That's not a problem.
Please, yeah, please.
Right. The current conflict, let's look at the border, the Rafah border, and then let's look at Yemeni Sea. Okay? Rafah border, to go from Egypt into Israel or into Palestine, is controlled by Israel. No aids getting in. Full stop. Correct?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
What you said is partially the inspection process of goods getting into the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing. Israel has a strong presence there and is deciding what does or doesn't get in. But there are aid trucks getting in.
Okay. Would you say enough trucks are getting in? Into
No. Nowhere near as normal are getting in. That's part of the problem with the inspections. But yes, some is getting in, is what I said.
What country again, sir? Sorry, you're from the UK, aren't you?
You asking if I'm from the UK?
Are you from the UK?
No, I'm from the United States.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Cast your mind back to 1963, I think the year I was born, if I'm correct. Russia sent 2 military ships with nuclear bombs heading for, what's it, Gastro, Ease Island. Am I right?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. They sent in Russia was going to deploy some weapons inside Castro's island. The Americans.
They sent missiles to Cuba. Yeah,
No,
that's Cuba.
yeah, Cuba, that was one. Yeah, the Cuba crisis. And America intervened because, no, you're not. You're going to turn them ships back. This was in international waters, not American waters, international waters. Now, Yemen, there's a little gap between Yemen and I think it's, I can't remember the other country on the opposite side. There's a little gap. Now, half that water belongs to Yemen. If Yemen don't want you to cross their water, all they want is a water stop. They're not trying to unalive anybody. What does he give the United States or the UK or anybody else to poo-poo or whatever you want to call it on Yemen? What gives them that right?
Yeah, the argument is that the waters, the distance of international law is 12 miles for international waters. So anything that's further than 12 miles off someone's coast, as long as you're staying in those waters, they're considered international. So what the argument from the British and the Americans is that because the Yemenis or the Houthis are interdicting traffic or damaging vessels that are traveling in international waters, they're violating international law, and therefore they have a right to be retaliated against. That's the argument. But their point is, hey, you're violating international law in Gaza by allowing a country to mass unalive / G-side tens of thousands of civilians, and therefore we're going to do this anyway. So that's the rub. I think technically both are wrong, but I understand why the Yemeni Houthis are doing what they're doing.
But they're doing it because they want to have a ceasefire and aid to get into the Palestinians as well as anybody else across the world trade to continue. All they want is Israel to stop. Whereas America and Britain and some of the other countries did not want to listen to that when they were doing it. And so the Yemeni took it upon, or the Houthis, not the Yemenis, but the Houthis took it upon themselves to say, we're going to try and stop these ships from getting there. Now, look how quick America and Britain and any other countries quickly jumped in. Remember, they didn't unalive or shoot at any ships at all. They were within the distance of the ships, but they didn't unalive anybody, right? But America was quick to send in whatever they had to send in because it involved trade, not people, trade.
Yeah.
Because your hamburger wasn't getting to you, or your oil wasn't getting to you, or your clothes wasn't getting to you. So does that not become a bit of a hypocritical country? And I love Americans, the ones down south anyway, right? That you can't say we support Israel because it's defending itself. But then when the Houthis are trying to defend or help the Palestinians, and I'm not talking about the H group, I'm talking about the Palestinians who are suffering, to say, look, just stop. This is not, you're fighting you're fighting innocent people. But they don't like it. And I just sort of, my bit was on that and now we're going into a bigger conflict, and we don't want that. For the sake of the world, we don't want that. These people need to stop and understand what's coming.
Yeah, we don't want this to spread into a regional or even a global conflict, that's for sure. So I agree with you. But remember, the Americans don't look at the world as an equal stage. They have rules that are supposed to apply to the world, and what they mean by that is everyone other than who they don't want it to apply to.
No, absolutely. But anyway, the guy that said to you, sir, that he knows me, yeah, he probably does. And it's probably in religious groups, which is why I asked you a religious question at the beginning. And all I am trying to do is get knowledge. That doesn't make me whatever you wanted to call me. Do you know what I mean? Because I have done nothing but show due respect on the 2 times, 3 times I've come and spoken to you. Your color doesn't matter to me. Your religion doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is you are a human being and what's in your heart. That's what matters. You've got a brain in your head and you're using it wisely. But I'm not going to go to Christianity or whatever else religion because you'll never win a religious argument, full stop. You'll never, but thank you for having me up anyway. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a nice rest of your day.
If
Yeah.
we win, yeah,
It's-
definitely.
See you later. Yeah, I never know who has what background or stuff like that. As long as somebody comes up and wants to talk about issues and not make it personal, I'm more than happy to hear almost anything someone has to say. You know, even if I completely can't follow or don't disagree, because who am I? I don't know. I don't know everything myself. It's good to learn from other people. Okay, we have Nafty. I think it is. Is that the name, Nafty? Are you there, Nafty? I'm not really sure what's going on with Nafty. Let's let Riri come up then until we can get Nafty's situation worked out.
Hi, Chip.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Okay.
Am I a bit delayed or do I sound okay?
No, I can hear you fine.
Perfect. Okay, just wanted to chime in. Obviously, I think everyone at this point have a lot of conflicting feelings about what's going on. I personally feel in a little bit of disbelief about what's happening. I mean, people in Rafah, which is the very last city in the south that people can move to, is now being under attack, and more than like hundreds of innocent people have already lost their precious lives.
Yeah.
So it just leaves me a little bit surprised that we, like the word let it go to this far. I don't know what's next, honestly. And at the same time, I try to keep hope because of the great people that speak up and try to fight for the right of Palestinians to exist and resist and survive. But I also feel ashamed of other countries, especially, unfortunately, the ones that are surrounding Palestine, the Arab countries, themselves Arab countries, that not only they did not try to defend or even try to hold Israel accountable for its crimes, they're now, assuring that Israel has a safe passage through their land after the Houthis have blocked the Red Sea. So it's not like they're even trying to be, neutral even. They're just now in full support of the oppressor. I mean, even in Jordan, which is supposed to be like a twin country, a lot of Palestinians live in Jordan because of the just huge number of people that were displaced to Jordan at different wars. They have been harassing and even arresting people who are going outside to protest. So yeah, there's a lot of feelings that I'm having. I try to just remain, focused and objective and try to just raise awareness, but it's a little bit scary at this point. And there's also the news that the Senate proposed an aid package, including $14 billion for Israel, which just like baffles me. I don't understand why they need aid when the funding for actual refugees and descendants of refugees from UNRWA is being cut for no reason, based on flimsy claims that there are no evidence of. So yeah, feeling a lot of things. And
Yeah,
I also,
well,
sorry.
Real quick about the aid, just to let you know this. So it's not just for Israel, it's also for Ukraine as well. They're trying to slide even more money into that.
Yeah.
Do you know where the money goes when that money gets allocated?
According to the news that I read, that I think 10 billion out of the 14 billion will go to Israel's security assistance.
Do you know what that's code word for?
Uh, Not sure. Maybe.
All right, let me share this with the
Industrial
audience and
complex.
yourself.
Sure.
So what happens is whenever money gets allocated towards other countries for conflict or security, that's code word for it goes to our weapons manufacturers.
Hmm.
So we supply foreign countries with arms, whether it's, guns, bombs, whatever. That money goes to the weapons manufacturers. It doesn't go to the country. The U.S. then donates the stuff, but the profits being charged at outrageous margins goes to the shareholders of these weapons manufacturers. And who are those people? They're the top 1% or 1/2 of 1% of American society and elsewhere. And they write the laws. They pay the bills of the people who then authorize the money. It's this vicious cycle. That's why Julian Assange said, and I think rightly so, that war is nothing more than a money laundering operation to get money from a sovereign treasury into the hands of the wealthy, that the bill goes to the public.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Pretty bad, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I'm no longer surprised at anything, honestly.
That's how it works.
Yeah, no longer surprised. So yeah, I think this is where we are. There are some crazy things that I've also been, remembering and thinking about. And I was just wondering about one thing that yesterday, and I wanted to ask you, have you ever seen the SHOOT, a Palestinian camp in Israel? Are you familiar with the camp that I'm referring to?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. You want to just elaborate?
Yes. So there is this entertainment camp in Israel, which is I'm spelling the first word because I'm not sure if it's not we're not supposed to say it on TikTok Live. So it's SHOOT. So SHOOT, a Palestinian camp. This is a camp that exists in Israel, and people go there for fun to imitate, keeping a Palestinian. And actually, there are a lot of Americans who have visited the camp for having fun, including celebrities, such as Jerry Seinfeld and I think Jessica Chastain. These are like actors. And people can just look at the photos, like they're posing and having a lot of fun in the camp and posting. They even posted it on social media. Ronnie, I saw you said show proof. Ronnie, can you please go to Google and type Jerry Seinfeld, SHOOT, a Palestinian camp. You will see an album of photos. So
Wow.
here's your
Pretty
proof.
sick. Pretty sick stuff.
Yeah, so for people who say that, no, it's just, it's because of the H group and, we're trying to defend ourselves. No, it's a systematic dehumanization. And for some reason, I kept thinking about that yesterday. And I just wanted to share it with you, Chip, in case you've never heard of it.
No, I hadn't heard. That's pretty disgusting.
Yep. One last thing I wanted to mention regarding the dehumanization. And I just realized that again yesterday. I've done a lot of contemplation yesterday, being stuck in my, bad places with what's going on in Rafah right now. One rhetoric that's being used to dehumanize Palestinians and also kind of depriving them from the value of their lives is, which I think also is a racist statement that's usually used, is that Palestinians have a lot of children. So even before the October 7 events happened, we would hear this statement very, very often. Even when I traveled outside of Palestine and met people who were indoctrinated, a comment that you guys have a lot of children. Oh, you would have like 20 children. Like I've heard this statement many times in my life. And they say that, oh, they have so many children. They use aid money and just they take resources from Israel. And I'm just realizing that, wow, so it shouldn't be surprising to anyone that innocent children are losing their lives, unfortunately, in this, what's happening right now. I wouldn't be surprised if it's intentional even. That's just my opinion. But I wouldn't even be surprised that it's intentionally targeting children just based on this observation and statement that I've heard several times in my life. So also wanted to mention this as well.
Yeah, well, if I were a Palestinian family, because of how the Israelis treat me and my people, I would want to try to have a child as fast as I possibly could because of how they're being unalived.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us are don't want to have children because we cannot, live this, what's happening. Like a lot of, especially millennials, are choosing not to have children because they're scared of what might happen to them. But yeah, I mean, I wish that people would have really 20 children. I wish they would really do that because, you have seen most of the children in Gaza. Where are they now? Some cities maybe lost most of their children. Gaza needs children, right? They're the joy of life, and they're the future generation. And actually, that reminds me of a statement that Golda Meir made in the past, that the old will go. I don't want to say the word. The old will go, and the young will forget.
Not likely.
Yeah, not likely. Yeah, sorry if I'm a little bit gloomy today, but just thinking these things, I wanted to share my thoughts with everyone.
No, it's okay. And by the way, thank you for getting back to me about that other issue we talked about. I got your messages.
Yeah, sure. Happy to help.
So awesome. Why don't you stay up in case someone wants to ask you questions too, but I'll let somebody else come from the chat for a second.
Sure.
We have someone named Deadly Bunny. I've never heard of that name before. How are you doing today?
Hi, Chip. What's up?
Hi, how are you doing? How did you choose your name? That's an interesting name.
I like being deadly and I like bunnies, so I thought I'd just keep them together.
Okay, well, what does it mean to be deadly? I'm not sure what that means.
No, I just like a lot of makeup. A lot of makeup that I do is horror inspired.
Oh,
So
I see.
because of
Okay,
that.
got
And
it.
I really like
Got it.
horror movies, so I thought that like deadly, and I like cute stuff, so I thought bunny.
Now, do you have a favorite horror movie of all time?
Of course, Jigsaw.
What Jigsaw? Okay, see, that's
The
that's
Saw
called, what is that called?
series.
It's called what is that whole series? There's a whole series, right? What's
The
it called
Saw
again?
series.
The Saw, yeah, Saw. That's what it is. Yeah, yeah. Those are pretty crazy horror movies. They have those little puzzles people have to try to get out from under, and then they don't, and they get hurt.
I
Worse.
love those horror movies. How are you today?
I'm okay. Just curious to hear about you. So, what's on your mind?
I saw you had a dog. May I ask what's your dog's name?
Her name is Ruby. Say hi, Ruby. She wants to go outside, which is
Oh,
what we're
she's
getting
such a
ready to
good
do.
girl.
Yep, she's a sweetie. Like, I'm gonna put her harness on.
Um,
So what's on your mind? What's on your mind?
I wanted to talk today about the hostages. I wanted to ask if you know who Nama Levy is.
That name does not ring a bell.
Can I tell you a bit about her?
Just explain to her, like, who she is in reference. Is she Israeli and she's being held by the H group?
She's one of the girls who were kidnapped on October 7th.
Okay, yeah, please, by all means.
So she's one of the girls. She's 19 years old. She's a peace activist. And on October 7th, she was kidnapped. It was her first week of her mandatory military service. And on
Okay.
October 7th, she was kidnapped. And there's a video of her
Was
before
was
she
she in
was.
uniform? Was she in uniform
No,
or
she
was she
wasn't in
civilian?
uniform. She was kidnapped in her pajamas.
Okay. But no, what I mean though is, was she in service mode or was she actually like at the
No, she
concert or
wasn't
something
in
like that?
service mode. She was taken from her bed in
I
their
mean,
like
but
shelter.
was she, from her kibbutz or was she in a military shelter? That's what question I'm trying to ask. Was she taken from a residential
Military,
shelter or a
but she
military?
was not a combat soldier.
Well, just to let you know, just technically speaking, just so you know this, if you're in the military and you're in military shelter, you're considered a combatant, whether you have your uniform on or your weapon with you.
But what I want to talk about is not the fact that she, regardless of the fact that it was her first week of
Yes.
service, she was also a peace
Right.
activist that really wanted to have a connection between Palestinians and Israelis and Jews. And her last video was her basically, it's a hard thing to, I don't know if you're allowed to say it here, but the B word, do you understand what I mean? BLOOD?
You probably don't want to say words like that.
Yeah,
But
so I'm not
I've heard
gonna
of
say
several
it.
people
I'm
that
not
would.
gonna say it, but I just want to say that the last video of her is basically her being her hair being pulled, and being pulled into a black truck with BLOOD all over the back of her pants, and her
Yeah,
face is
I saw that
bruised.
video. Yeah,
And
I
she's
saw that
current,
video. Yeah.
she's currently there. And I just want to come up to bring awareness about that, because I feel like lately the world has forgotten about her. And yeah,
Okay.
I feel like it's really not fair, because she was a peace activist, and she was in an organization called I forgot the organization's name, but you can Google it. She was in an organization that's for Hands of Peace, that was an organization that was like basically really wants to bring peace to both Palestinians and Israeli Jews. So I just wanted to
Uh,
talk about her and ask if you like
yeah.
know who she is, because I think that,
Well,
sorry, what were you saying?
well, what I was saying is, I'm happy to hear anything about her you want to share with the audience. I did want to just kind of ask about some other framing real quickly, just so we can have the common understanding.
Of course.
So I understand you're saying that she's a peace activist, and she was the
Yes.
person who was depicted in the video where she was being pushed in or out of a vehicle with like a
Pulled into a
sweatpants that
black
had.
vehicle.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let me finish. I promise you I'll give you ample time to share whatever you want to share. So first of all, this is going to sound. I'm not trying to be sarcastic when I say this or anything like that, or even what's the right word? I'm not saying it to do anything other than to point this out. So she's a peace activist who was serving in the IDF. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just leave that for where it is. And so, secondly, she was unfortunately caught up in the events of 10/7. And if there was somebody who was peace minded who served in the H group's militancy, how would you categorize that person?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Can you please ask
If there
it?
was a peace-minded person who was serving in the militant arm of the H group that was involved in the attacks of 10/7 because it was their duty to do so in their community, how would you frame that person?
I don't believe that there's someone serving in the H group that wants a peaceful resolution. They want Zionists out of Israel. And that's
Okay, and
what
that's a fair way to
with their
put it. But
charter.
I'm just trying to point out it's a little inconsistent for somebody who's quote a peace activist to be serving in the military.
I feel like you're trying to make the comparison that the IDF is like H group, and I have to just disagree with that.
Well, they both are involved in tactics that involve weaponry and violence, right?
They do not, the IDF does not take hostages unless they have committed a crime. And while I can admit, I'm sorry, Chip, that I'm taking a lot of time on your panel, I can admit
No,
that
it's
there
okay.
are cases where it's not fair, where they take young children, like under the age
Hmm.
of 16, who hold weapons or not, or I'm sorry, sharp things, pointy things. I don't know what exactly what's the TikTok friendly word. But overall, most of I truly believe, and I stand by my people, that the IDF
Hmm.
are serving, like, they're nothing, not even close, not even 1%, like, never. It's a military, and that's a T organization, and that's a huge difference.
Do you think that actions matter, or is it just the names that matter?
Of course, I think actions matter. That's why I would stand behind the IDF.
So, do you think there are actions that take place that are more pervasive than what the H group could do in 10 lifetimes that have been done by the Israeli forces that are harmful in ways that aren't necessary?
I
Is that
think
possible?
I think that our government is currently not making all of the best decisions, but I think that we're trying to like, like trying to act in the best way that we can given the circumstance.
So, do you know that
Also,
you
Chip,
sound like
I'm
you're
so sorry
somebody?
for disturbing you, but thank you to everyone who sent me the coins. I love all of you.
So, yeah, it's okay. So, the question is this in terms of, I don't see the government. So, I don't know. You sound like you're not as old as I am. I'm 50, 56 years old. You sound like you're a little younger.
I'm really
So, but I've been watching
years
this for a
old.
long, long time. So I've had a chance to see the ebbs and flows of this from all sorts of different leadership, American, Israeli, and also in the occupied territories. And so there's been a pervasive pattern that's taken place over all those decades. And it doesn't really matter who's been in power, unfortunately. Right now, we have a very right wing group that's in power that a lot of people in Israel don't like, Netanyahu government. But this policy to dispossess Palestinians of their land, to settle the territory in the West Bank, and to basically, put it this way, disproportionately harm Palestinians, regardless of whatever things have happened as a resistance movement, have been in place consistently over all that time.
Do you consider
And the
H
reason why
group as a resistance movement? I'm so sorry
the,
for
the,
interrupting you.
the reason why I bring that up is because a lot of people think, and I can understand, it's all about framing, that what the Israeli forces do is like a military, and what the H group does is terrorism. That's what we hear all the time. And so I would argue, and again, just looking at the behavior, forget about how you call the uniform or the framing, that the behavior done by the Israeli forces is far, far, far worse in terms of its aggregate human life impact than anything that the H group has ever done, including that those who preceded them as the PLO in the 1980s. By far, no contest.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. May I?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So you
Yeah,
see,
please.
disagree with you on that because it's not. I didn't only say that about the uniform. I didn't say that about the. I'm talking about the way they're acting, and I believe and I see that the way the IDF are acting in are you allowed to say Gaza? Like in Gaza
Yeah,
is
you can
nothing
say Gaza.
compared to what H group did to our people on October 7th. They didn't burn people, they didn't grape people, they didn't do all of those things. What they're doing now is trying to get our people back and trying to eliminate H group. And
Can we talk
that's
about
what
that
I
for?
believe.
Can we go through that a bit,
Uh,
like in a more
do
specific
you
way?
disagree with the fact that H group graped people?
I'll put it this way. I have no reason to deny. I don't have evidence to deny the claims. I don't have evidence to
But we
corroborate
have
the
evidence
claims.
to prove that it's true.
I've heard that over and over again, and people say that, and yet I've never seen it, and no one else has said they've seen it. No independent person has seen it. They said they've shown video to people like independent journalists, but none of the journalists that I've interacted with have said they've seen indications of the things, the more severe allegations that you've just referred
Did
to.
you see the graping yourself on Hamas.com? Did you see the graping of children?
Hold on, slow down. Who said that? We're
Who's
doing this
talking?
one at a time.
Hello,
Yeah,
Anandab? Hello.
Hello.
yeah. The H.com website is fraught with malware, and the whole purpose of telling people to go there is to get people to
You're
crack their
lying.
computers.
You
So
You're
see,
lying.
can't go there.
you see the
All
thing
right.
about that, Chip?
Wait,
You see the thing?
one sec. I just got to make something clear for Aman Bra. I'm happy to have you on here, but it's got to be in the way I run it, which is pretty, fair-minded and orderly. So if you jump in again, I don't want to mute you. I just don't want to kick you off, but let's just do it by order. I'll happily let you speak. Okay, please continue, buddy.
Do you want me to keep quiet to let someone else talk? I can keep quiet for a bit.
Well, it's okay. I mean, I appreciate your point of view. I think, again, I always like to talk about biophysical reality versus interpretation. So we know what happened. We know what happened on the 7th, right? We saw that people died, and that there was a physical breaking out of the territorial boundaries of Gaza. There were a number of militants and others who's poured out, and then things happened, right? So whatever happened, people ended up unalive, right? We know that for a fact. That's not in question. Now, there's a lot of question as to how it got that
So
way.
you see, Chip, the thing
And
about the difference between you as me is that I know people from October 7th.
hold on. I'm trying to make a point, and I'm happy to listen to what you have to say. Just let me finish. Okay, I promise I'll give you plenty of time. I'm not an air hog. What I was trying to say is there's a difference between what happens and how people interpret or speak around what happens. So, for example, the H group would say, I'm imagining, which they did say publicly, we came across with the intent of taking as many hostages as we could so we can use them as leverage to get our brothers and sisters out of imprisonment in Israel. That was their mission as far as they publicly stated. Now, they also, as far as I understand it, and to whatever extent I'm not clear, engaged with civilians, which I think under any circumstances is unacceptable and reprehensible to whatever degree it happened. But they also have denied that they wholesale used SA or violence in that regard as a tool of their actions. That's what they've said. Now, from the Israeli perspective, they've said that this was a T attack that was unprovoked and out of the blue and unfair to them, and that a lot of these people were treated in the way you've described. And they have all this evidence that backs it up. But I've begged people on multiple occasions to send me evidence. Now, they've sent me a link to a website saying, go to this website. I'm not going to a website with malware. If somebody wants to send the data onto Telegram, I'm happy. I've been given Telegram links and servers to go to, and I've checked it out, and I've never once found any evidence that backs up those claims. If there is that evidence, I will happily report on it to my audience. I swear, I've said this to about 10 different people, and I've never once gotten anything that corroborates those stories. So I don't know what you want me to do. I'm trying to be fair. So what do you have to say to that? Do you have access to any of the evidence you're referring to?
Yes. And also I have to say that the difference between you and me when it comes to this evidence is that I know people from from October 7th who are unalived. I know people who were in the area. And also, there are 2 people currently from my own town that were kidnapped. And I really don't understand. You don't only have to go to go to H Group's Telegram. They have enough videos of them holding children hostage, and pictures of girls with their legs spread apart, half naked. Do you think that's not evidence?
Telegram, just to let you know, Telegram canceled their channel about 6 weeks ago. So there's no chance for us to go there and do
Okay,
some of that
so
footage
you
if it
see,
was
but
there.
you understand that there is evidence. You just have to look for it. It's not
So I'm
like
trying to.
there
That's
isn't.
my point.
I can
I'm
send
trying
you.
to look for it.
You know what,
Yeah,
Chip?
please
I
do.
can send you some messages and links
Yeah,
and
please
stuff.
do.
I don't want to
If,
share these things because they're horrid
it's
and
okay.
they psychologically damage you. And also, yeah, my friend brought up another thing. The New York Times did a whole investigation by this. And as you know, the New York Times are not they're not in favor of Israel, but they had people come here do an investigation. It was proven that in fact many women were raped, and not only raped, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say the word, but torture, like TORTURED, like in a really horrid way. So you can just read
Okay.
that as well. That's one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
I feel
Okay.
like I'm speaking on.
Let me respond to that real quick. I'll let you keep talking. I just want to cover things one at a time. So, if you remember what I said earlier, I want to be very clear. I'm not denying in any circumstance what happened because I have no knowledge that it didn't. That's not fair for me to say. What I would say that I think is fair and reasonable, not out of bounds, is that if the claims are made that there's direct evidence for it all over the place, I think were your words or other people have said, but I've been trying like heck for a long time, and I mean this. I've spent tens of hours of my time scouring things that people have told me to look at, going down thousands of posts on Telegram channels, never once seeing any direct evidence that's showing in the moment what happened. Now, there may not be film of what happened. There may just be testimony after the fact, or as you said, photographs of women with certain positions that you think indicate that it happened. Maybe it did. I don't know for sure. And one thing I'll share with you, and I'll let you back on, is that I just did a video, or I'm going to do a video, it's actually recorded but not posted yet, of a Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. And if you don't know who Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson was, he was the chief aide to General Colin Powell, who was our Secretary of Defense in the United States from 1980 to 1986. And during that time, Colonel Wilkerson dealt with Israelis constantly. That was part of his deal as far as his relationships he had to manage for the Secretary of Defense. And he just put out a video recently, said, there's not a single time in the history of dealing with my contacts with Israel where I believed a single word they said. They lied and lied and lied and lied constantly, so much so that we just laughed when they said something.
Israelis
So I don't know
lied?
what to say to that. Hold on, I'm almost done. I don't know what to say about that except for the fact that when it's like the boy who cried wolf. If you've ever heard that story, the boy who cried wolf. The boy said wolf, and all the people from the village come out and there's no wolf. He did it again, no wolf. Did it like 5 times, no wolf.
No,
Then
no,
the
no. But
6th time he yelled
Israelis
wolf. Hold
lied?
on, I'm not done yet. Not done yet. Not done yet. I'm not saying that all Israelis lie. I'm saying that the Israeli officials who speak to these types of issues tend to not spread the truth. The first thing we heard out of this whole process was 40 babies with heads removed, right? That's the very first thing that went viral. It was across the news cycle for 4 days. Nobody at once corrected it until they finally said, oh, you know what? That was somebody who said something they shouldn't have said to a reporter. It wasn't true. Our mistake. What was the damage was already done. The whole world thought that the H group was out there removing the heads of 40 different infants, which is a pretty horrible thing to allege if it didn't really happen. And then on top of that, we have, unfortunately, no corroborating evidence of all the other claims. Again, I have seen some corroborating evidence of some of the unalignings. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. And I think it's reprehensible, and I've reported it as such to my audience, which I think any fair person would do. But to make the claim based on past history of not telling the truth, and somebody says, well, listen, my cousin said she saw her friend see this, that's insufficient. And if that's the only evidence that exists, it may never be sufficient to rise the case of proof, although I have no reason to doubt it. That's my point. Other than the fact that there's been plenty of lies spread before, so it makes it harder to embrace the stories over than not seeing the evidence. That's my point. Let me let you get back in.
Yeah, can I go now?
Yeah, please.
So basically, you made the claim of the 40 babies, and it's funny that everyone always tries to use that as a gotcha moment because it wasn't even us who reported it. It was another report. It was an American reporter from CNN. And the whole thing about the point of bringing, like, have you read the New York Articles time? Like the article?
I read a summary of it.
Okay. And also, just to be fair, like, you want to see a video of a woman being raped to believe that there was rape?
I don't want to see a video of anything happening. For the sake of being fair and honest and unbiased, to have a newspaper author claim that he heard reports or she heard reports of people claiming this happened, it, to me, is insufficient evidence. The New York
But
Times wrote
that's not what
numerous
they're
articles
saying.
during.
That's not
Hold
what
on,
they're
hold
saying.
on. The New York Times wrote multiple articles during the beginning of the Ukraine war that were 100% false based on witness testimony. I unfortunately have a hard time believing anybody from the New York Times because there's a huge influence of American and Israeli propaganda in the Western media system.
Also, about the whole 40 babies, babies were unalive and they weren't only beheaded, they were burned, they were plenty other things.
Yeah,
So I would
no evidence to
listen,
support you. No evidence.
I would
No
love to
evidence.
send you articles and everything about the graping but I feel like you're looking at this very, very one-sided because in the end of the day, somebody who is working with Israeli.
Let me do this. I'm going to make this real easy on you, okay? Because sending me an article where somebody writes about somebody speaking about what they saw is not proof. That's testimony and third-party allegation, what we call hearsay in the courtroom. So it has some validity to it. It doesn't have no validity, but it isn't definitive. So I'll give you my Telegram, okay? You can go to my Telegram page. You can send me anything you want. It won't be censored. I don't want to watch stuff like that, but for the sake of trying to corroborate what you're saying, I'm happy to do it as a gesture of good faith and being fair. And after I do that, if what you're saying is truthful, I will discuss it. You can come on back and we'll talk about it. And I will say, you know what? You're absolutely right. Or if it doesn't show that, I'll come back and tell people what it did or didn't show. I think that's fair. I don't know what else I can say about that.
No,
But
but
we have to let
I'm
other
trying
people
to
talk. We have to
understand
let
what's
other.
sufficient of evidence for you.
I explained. It has to rise to the standard as anything else. So if I made the claim that the Israeli military butchered 345 Palestinian civilians, and trust me, my friend saw it, what would you say? Well, what's the proof of that? Your friend said he saw it, right? Is that proof? No, it's not proof. It's an allegation. It's done through third-party testimony. The proof of something is either video evidence or forensic evidence to such an extent that it's irrefutable. And the New York Times writing an article is not that. I got to let somebody else come on. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, of
Thank you
course.
so much. I'm going to tell you my Telegram so you can go track it. It's in my link in bio, but I'll give it to you right now. If you type in the letter T as in Tom, .me, like T.me, which is the universal, to get people to Telegram, and then it's just / my name, Chip Barnes. T.me / Chip Barnes. That'll take you to a page. You can message me. Happily send me what you have. I will promise you I'll take a look at it. Listen, I'm as fair as you're going to find on the pro-Palestinian side as far as looking at this stuff. I have no reason to want to lie. If the truth points to what you're saying is accurate, I will certainly tell the audience, hey, this is what I found out. This is what it is. I promise. Okay, I think we had Joy that was waiting to speak, and then we're going to go to, I can't read, Aman, I think it is, or Nam.
Sorry,
Hey, Joy, how you doing?
sorry to interrupt. I have to run, and I'll be back later.
Okay, Joy.
Hi, how you
Nice to
doing?
have you. Is this Riri or is this Joy? Or was that Riri saying that? Okay, Joy.
Yeah.
This is
No,
okay. I thought that was Joy.
yeah,
Hi,
Riri's
Joy.
going. I'm here.
How you
Hi.
doing? What's on your mind?
Well, I actually just wanted to respond to what Riri said before about the Pew Pew Palestinian camp.
Okay.
Because I researched it, like after she mentioned it. And see, like I've seen with a lot of things, if you Google it, the first thing that comes up is the source of newarab.com, where it calls it a Pew Pew Palestinian camp. And then
Okay.
it continues to have about 3 pages of every other news outlet reporting this incident and has got
Yeah.
nothing to do with the word Palestine or Palestinians at all.
What is it? From what you understand, what is it about?
It's about, they have some sort of like IDF training camp practice where you get to do some pew-pewing and some this, but it's nothing about pew-pewing Palestinians. And to just
Okay.
come up and say, they say this, they have this, it exists in Israel, like, it's just another, like, it's the same with everything. They find one article that says one thing, ignore the 25 articles that say something else.
Yeah, that's
Well,
fair.
it's that.
The same standard should apply on both sides, right? So if an article references it, we shouldn't
Oh,
just
I
take it
mean,
at
I
face
don't
value,
know
right?
about you, but personally, I will not believe just one article. I will
Yeah,
look
that's
for
fair.
multiple articles to
Yeah,
match
that's fair.
the
Perfectly
belief
fair.
system.
Yep, that's reasonable. I agree.
Yes. But if I may, you also just said before to Deadly Bunny that that you've done lots of research and looking into the grape.
No, I didn't say I've done lots of research. I said I've combed through all of the things that people have sent me that
Right, as in,
show proof of
yeah,
it. That's what I've
sorry,
done.
I mean it like that, as in you spent lots of time looking into the things that people have sent you. I
reviewed it thoroughly.
Yeah. So I just found it a little funny that then you said that you didn't even read the New York Times article.
No, I said I read a summary of
Yeah,
it.
exactly. You just read a summary.
Yeah.
Isn't that quite?
Because unfortunately, I don't have time to read every single piece of information that comes out. I wouldn't be able to breathe or go to sleep.
Right, but if you said that you cared so deeply to look into this, that you combed through everything and spent many hours, but you don't have the time to read a whole article.
What I said is that people who have sent me things, I've spent the time to thoroughly go through it as I promised that I would do. I never promised anybody I'd read a New York Times article.
Yeah, but it's one of the big pieces of evidence.
Sure. It's not. Listen, it's not evidence. It's a written piece describing what they believe to be things that corroborate the things that went on.
No, it's not. It's an article about an investigation that was done.
It's not evidence.
It's an article about an investigation.
The New York Times, if you don't know its history, just go back and look at some of the articles that were written in 2022.
Yeah, but you're claiming that the article is something that it's not.
I'm claiming that it has dubious roots to it based on how the editorial staff of the New York Times chooses to draft its content.
Perhaps, but it's talking about an investigation. It's not an opinion piece.
Well, the other thing is investigations that are done by Israeli sources, I give them as much weight as I do somebody throwing a dart at the wall.
See, that's the problem. You're going to bring up the 40 babies thing, right? No,
I didn't bring that up. I'm saying that here's the unfortunate path that I've found. Okay, I've been watching this for 34 years. It's not like I just made this up out of the blue. Unfortunately, and I wish it were different, by the way, because it would bring a lot more credibility to the things that are investigated. It certainly could be true. I've said that repeatedly. I have no reason to deny the claims, but I have no way to corroborate them either. And an article written based on an IDF or an Israeli study or investigation is meaningless. I hate to say it. I wish it weren't, but it is, because they lie constantly. Okay. That's what they do.
So question, what sources do you think are accurate, specifically from the Palestinian side of things?
Video.
Okay, there's many videos of things that have happened.
That's the most accurate source, I think. And people have said there's no such thing as a bomb being dropped on a building with civilians with no warning. I have literally 150 different videos or more probably that show bombs dropping with people who are independent journalists on the ground pointing their cameras at the building while there's no warning, no people leaving, none of that stuff, and boom, the building comes down. Tons of those. That's what I call evidence.
But they get warned in advance.
No, they don't. That's the party line. That's the part about the lying. That's the hard part. Now, does it happen sometimes? Yeah. There are times when it comes to hospitals and other areas where they're warned to go south or whatever it may be. Yeah, there's been some warnings, but the vast majority, and this is what gets told. This is the hard part about the whole process. It's hard for people to understand from Israel who support Israel. There's a standard line that goes out to the public. Oh, we do this. We're virtuous. We do this, this, and this. But they don't in most cases. They do whatever serves their purposes. All the stuff about all these targets going up the chain of command, all these legal analysis, it's all bullshit.
So just a question. So you don't believe anything that any articles that come out about anything from Gaza, you only believe video footage?
No, I have a hard time giving it credibility. I don't know for sure whether what's being spoken of has any validity or not because of the excess number of situations where it was proven to be a complete lie over and over and over and over. I could say over 1,000 times.
Right. I mean, but we can also talk about how, Al Jazeera, for example, is known as a very uncredible source.
You could make that allegation if you wanted to. I don't know for sure about which.
I mean, it's not me that's made the allegation. It's many, many people, and it's been proven that it's funded by Qatar. So,
but my experience in watching Al Jazeera's coverage versus watching Israeli spokespeople claim things is a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
Different experience. Not because I want to believe one or the other, because I see what the evidence proves versus what they say, and many times it's corroborated. Other times I can't corroborate stuff they say. But in this case, it's not because I don't want to. And listen, just to let you know, to whatever extent friends of yours were harmed or other people's friends or families harmed, it's horrible. And if women were treated that way in such a way where they were, essayed or whatever you want to call it, that's horrible. And I'm against any of that happening to anybody ever. I'm outraged by it. And no civilian should be harmed ever, unless it's completely by accident in the course of like a combative situation. I feel terrible about that. But the claims that are being made and the extent they're being made that are inflaming the public and driving a lot of this outrage and justifying the response that we're seeing, saying we have to have never again because we have to go after these people because this can never be allowed to continue. I understand that there could be an impetus for outraging the public. That's part of the propaganda system that countries do regarding that get their public on board for a certain campaign. And the argument that they're just going after the militants is not borne out by the evidence. And by the way, I'm not the only person to make this comment. It's not because I want to make it. It's because anybody with a set of eyes and ears can look at video and look what the other governments around the world are saying. They don't hate Israel. They hate people who are unaliving tens of thousands of people unnecessarily. That's what they hate. It just happens to be Israel that's doing it.
We could definitely argue about that one. I don't think that's the case whatsoever. Otherwise, the anti-Semitism in the world wouldn't have spiked the incredible amount that it has.
Why do you think it spiked? That's a good question to focus on.
It's a wonderful question. Why did the H course happen?
Well, that's because
Why
of what
have
happened in World
any
War II.
Jewish
You
people
said it
being...
spiked.
No, I'm
You said
saying,
it spiked recently. You said it spiked recently, right?
why are Jewish
So what
people
caused it?
targeted
What
at
caused
all
it
for
to?
being Jewish?
What caused it to spike recently? You said recently it spiked. What
Yeah,
caused
it
it to spike
did,
recently?
since October 7th.
So you think the Holocaust caused it to spike recently?
No, I didn't say that at all. I
Okay.
was saying, you
What did
asked
you say?
why did it happen? I brought up an example of the H course because it's another reason, it's another example of why nothing caused hatred towards Judaism. And
So do you
Jewish
think that
people.
the attack on the 7th was the beginning of a sort of a groundswell of anti-Semitism towards Jewish people?
I mean, it has majorly increased since October 7th.
So has the attack increased the anti-Semitism? That's the question. That's the causal link I think you're trying to make.
Of course it has.
Okay, how so?
Well, the offenses that have happened all over the world against Jewish people for being Jewish has increased
So let
significantly.
me understand. You're saying that Jewish people in Israel were attacked
Not in
by
Israel.
a group.
No. Outside of Israel.
No, but I'm saying you're mentioning the core activity that led to this other behavior you're referring to. So the source behavior was the H group or the militants or the T words attacking Israel, quote, unexpected and unprovoked. And therefore, everyone else around the world decided to pile on and start hating on Jewish people. Is that
When
the
did
argument?
I say everyone else around the world decided to
You
do
said that
that?
an increase
Yeah,
in
there
anti-Semitism
has been
because of
an
the attack.
increase, not from everyone in the entire world. That's not what an increase in anti-Semitism means.
No, fair enough. I misworded it. So you're saying there's been an increase as a direct result of the actual event on 10/7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Well
let me
documented.
deconstruct that for a second. So let me ask you a fair question. Is it possible that the increase in anti-Semitism or the response to people who happen to be Jewish around the world, who are, I guess, maybe unfairly but tangentially connected by some to what happens in Israel, I'm not saying that's fair, but I guess you're saying that, is it possible it's the response that has taken place to 10/7 and the horrific sort of impact that's had on people that has maybe emotionally triggered them to such an extent that they may feel a little more angry towards people who may seem to them to be representative of the thing they're being angered by? Is that possible or is that not possible?
So, but what about the whole Israel isn't Jewish people? What about all of that? So you're
Is it
saying
not
it's
possible? I'm
understandable
just
that
asking you that one
Jewish
question first,
people
and
have been
we can
attacked
cover the next
around the
question.
world because of what's going on in Israel.
Is it possible, though, that people are responding to the outrage of the response, not so much the attacks themselves? Is that possible or is that not possible?
Of course it's possible, but there was also
Okay.
anti-Semitism, like anti-Semitistic.
Yeah,
No, that's not the right
no doubt.
word.
There's no
There were
reason to
attacks
doubt
going
that
on
at all.
before
There's no doubt.
October 7th. Of course there
There's
were.
no doubt that there's no doubt that Eddie, you made the allegation that it's increased dramatically since the attack of 10/7. My point of view is that I don't believe it's the attacks that have prompted that. I believe it was the response to the attacks that people found so egregious that
So,
increased anger. That's my
see,
point.
in that mindset, so what do you say about the people who screamed Intifada on the streets on October 8th? Because Israel hadn't
I think that
responded then.
I'm not listening. I'm not aware of every single protest, every single place, and what exactly was said at each one. And I'm not against any intent to pretty much unalive massive groups of people. I'm against under any side. It doesn't matter which side it is. I think that's horrific. And so, my understanding of Intifada, just to let you know, maybe I misunderstand it, is Intifada means resistance. It means fight back.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Intifada is. And for those people who feel dispossessed of the land that their parents and grandparents held back in the the 40s when this all came to be, if they have an anger about that and they want to try to restore the situation that existed before that, they have every right to feel that way.
But
But I don't believe
you
it's
are
claiming that shouting
educated.
those words we may hate Jewish people.
You're educated on what
But
happened during the first and the second Intifada, right?
yeah, of course.
Okay, so calling for another Intifada is calling for the same actions to be repeated. And to
It's an
say
uprising. Yeah,
that,
it's an uprising against
well, I
against one's
don't really
oppression. It's
think
an uprising against one's
ex-bombers,
oppressive conditions.
boom boomers, whatever you want to call them, in cafes and schools and buses is really resisting, because that's purely for civilians. That's not against any army personnel whatsoever.
Did anybody say during the marches to unalive civilians by bombing cafes
No, but
and
that's
buses? Did anybody
what
say those words?
happened in the
Okay.
Intifada.
Well, let's
So
focus
calling
on
for another
that. Then.
Intifada is calling for the same actions to happen.
During the second Intifada, how many cafes and buses were blown up?
I don't know specifically off the top of my head.
Zero.
I do not believe that is accurate
So the point of that
whatsoever,
is,
but I can go
the
look
point
it
of
up
that
right
is, and
now.
it wasn't even during necessarily the first Intifada. There was a pervasive use of horrific tactics during the leadership of Yasser Arafat and the Palestinian Authority, where people went into Israel proper in cities, and they would go into cafes and buses and other places, and they would harm Jewish people for the sake of political terrorism. That's what happened. I totally am against that as a tactic of resistance.
Okay, I don't have the time to speak to you and look this up as well. But yeah, okay, same idea. Unaliving the Israelis, that was the Intifada. And they were screaming that.
I hear some noise in the background. Somebody said, "You or is that somebody else?"
Not me.
Hold on a second. Let me see if I can get that off of there. There we go. You can argue about tactics, but the idea of resisting is the general sentiment that I believe people are referring to. Just like when they say from the river to the sea, they don't mean to take every single person who happens to be Jewish and unalive them or shove them in the water. What they're saying is, just as I believe Netanyahu has said publicly, he said from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River, he wants to have Israeli control of the territory, which he still is trying to accomplish, which is obvious. When he says that, I don't believe he means that he wants to take every person who's Palestinian and put them into 6 feet below ground. I don't believe that, but I believe his intent is control of territory. And I believe when those on the other side say it, they believe that the current control of the Israeli government is inappropriate given the historical circumstances, and therefore it should be restored to something that's fair. Now, do I believe it's politically practical for that to happen? No. I believe the 1667 borders is probably the biggest contentious point of this entire conversation, which I believe is a fair point to point to, but because of the settlements and the fragmentation of the territory, it's probably unlikely or impractical because of the quantity of settlers. So it leaves this in sort of a quagmire of what to do to create peace. But as long as there's occupation and subjugation and military blockade of a place, you're not going to have a peaceful sort of neutrality, I don't believe. And I think just put yourself on the opposite side of that. How would you feel? You probably wouldn't feel so good about it either. That's my point. I do have to do this, Joy. You put out a lot of great points. I wanted to thank you for sharing them. And I have to let some other guests. We have like 12 people
Yeah,
that are
no
requesting. So
worries.
thank you for being here.
I'd
Thank
love to
you.
be able to come in.
Thank you. Real quick, I did promise one other person. He was waiting patiently. I have a hard time seeing in the sun. Excuse me. His name is pronounced. Is it Anand Dabraha? Am I saying it right, Anand?
It's Anand Abraham.
Anand. I apologize. I'm sorry. So how are you
No,
doing
that's
today?
fine. Yeah, I'm okay. How are you today?
Good, thanks. I'm sure you probably have plenty to share after that long conversation. So what would you like to talk about?
Yeah, I came to talk about two things. The ICJ ruling.
Okay.
I mean, you're the perfect person to discuss it. It's so difficult to discuss it both in the pro-Pali live. I mean, I'm more on the Zionist side, on the pro-Israeli side, right from day one. So I was not really thinking about this till October 6th. And then I just switched on BBC. I'm in the UK right now. And,
Okay.
the girl that the earlier person described, I didn't know she was in the IDF. I actually saw that video. Did you see the video of Shani Luke? Do you know about Shani Luke?
Yeah, I know about Shawnee Luke.
Yeah.
Is she actually not alive or is she alive? I heard
We
there was
don't
a
know.
different story I heard.
We don't know.
Yeah.
I actually saw the video of her in the back of a truck, and they say that kids from Gaza were like spitting on her body. She was unconscious. She had a head injury. I think
Yeah.
they tried to save her
Thank you
life.
so much for mentioning it.
Yeah,
Well, just a sec.
I
We're gonna talk about this from all sorts of angles. And by the way, there's no hate here.
I
I didn't
want
get
to talk
found
to
out.
you. I just want to
Hold
make
on a
sure.
sec. Hold on a sec. I'm happy to have you come in, B. If you haven't noticed, I gave about 30 minutes to the last person to go back and forth. So I'll give you plenty of time and plenty of floor time, but just got to do it in a fair order. Thank you for being patient.
It's in a
yeah,
fair order. I'm going
I
to
I
be
just
on.
have to tell you, a lot of my Jewish friends would
Just B.
hate me being
As
on
I
it.
said before to the last person, I don't
Thank
like to
you
get
so much.
people off the panel, but it's got to be in order. Okay. I'm just trying to keep an orderly panel. So you'll get your chance. I promise. So please
I'm
continue,
not
sir.
going to talk to you. I'm going to be.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Let's do this. Then.
Well, Chip, I've been listening to you for 2-3 weeks now. You just came out of nowhere. You have blown up on TikTok, and I know you have YouTube lives, and you were saying about your Telegram and all that. Initially I didn't know what your motivation was. You said you were ex-military. But from everything you've said, you're definitely on the Palestinian side, and you keep saying that you're objective, but everything you say is one-sided.
Let me respond to that. So there's a video that I just put out. It's like the second to last video that I did. I can appreciate people seeing it that way, by the way, and that's understandable given the way that I speak. However, if the script was flipped, which is the video that I made, with everything we've seen to date that was happening to Arab Palestinians or Palestinian Christians or whoever they may be, was the exact opposite. That there was an Arab state carved out of historic Palestine by the British or whomever else. And that they had marginalized people who were Jewish living in those territories, and they had to leave, and they were scattered. Many of whom ended up in this little strip called the Gaza Strip, and many of whom went elsewhere. And then subsequent to that, the Arab state decided, because of whatever reasons, it was going to take over more territory because of threats from these other people, and therefore it took it over. And then it's completely subjected the Jewish people, both in Gaza and the West Bank, to this horrible treatment. Even if the Jewish people attacked on 10/7, which I would have found the tactics horrible, I still would vie for the marginalized Jewish population. I don't know how I can be any more consistent. I'm siding with the side who I believe is marginalized, not Palestinians.
So you feel it's the Palestinians who've been oppressed for 75 years?
I don't think, I know.
Yeah, okay. And do you know the history of what happened in 1948?
More than you ever want to talk about.
Yeah, I didn't. I knew a bit about it, but I only picked up a few details. You know that as soon as the mandate was ending, Israel declared independence, and 5 or 6 Arab armies attacked.
Why did they attack?
I don't know. Ask them. Why did?
Let's ask you.
If they didn't attack, we wouldn't be in this mess right now. If they agreed to the partition plan, we wouldn't be. And do you know the Peel Commission? Do you know the Peel Commission in 1937?
Why did they attack? Why did they attack? Let's just cover that one question first. It's important. Why did the Arab governments attack, and what was the arrangement? Was the basis for the attack? Was it that Arab people hated Jewish people, and all they want to do is kill Jewish people?
No, they didn't want a partition of the land. I've seen the headlines.
Okay, so what?
I've seen the headlines from Jerusalem Post.
What was the arrangement that was offered that ended up being the final delineation of land and people?
The Jewish people got 44% when they were about 23% of the population. There were 600,000. The Arabs were 1.5 million. The Arabs got 55,000, which was very unfair. First of all, they didn't want any partition. They wanted the Jewish people to live like they live in Germany, with the dhimmi status, pay jizya tax.
Let me just correct that.
Be seen, not heard. Be seen, not heard. Don't have your own homeland.
Hold on, real quick. Just to correct those numbers, okay? The numbers were the Jewish population for the state of Israel getting 55% of the land, 45% going to the Arab population. The Arab population made up 62% of the population. The Jewish population made up 38%. That's a much disproportionate distribution of the land. Well, let me finish. You're not giving me a chance to get a word in. I got to at least go back and forth a little bit with you. So when you say that this all started because the Arab countries quote attacked, and we wouldn't be here today because of that, The reason why we're here and the reason why the attack was because of the unfair nature of the agreement, which was being crammed down the throats of those who had no say in changing it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
they lost a bunch of hologram survivors. 2,000 hologram survivors died in the 9-month war, and they got their butts kicked, and they've been getting their butts kicked for 75 years. They lost the 48 war, they lost 56 war, they lost 67 war, 73 war, Yom Kippur war. October 7th was the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur war. They initially won, and they even tell their children that they won the 73 war. Because they won one battle, they teach their children in Syria and Egypt that they won the war against the Yahud. It's complete taqiyya. It's complete gaslighting. They gaslight their own. And sadly, I don't know if that's what you're doing, gaslighting people, thousands of people for 3 months.
Okay. Well, it's fair for you to make that assessment. That's your opinion. And what I'm trying to say is this. Especially in 1967, it's indisputable that the Israeli military won the war in 1948. Quite surprising, by the way. So, tip of the cap to them for winning it. No one disputes that.
Yeah.
However,
They didn't win. They didn't. It was 48 was not a clear win.
You've accused me of, quote, gaslighting for 3 months. So let me have a chance to respond, please. I'm not interrupting you too much. I'm giving you a chance to say what you want to say. So let me say my piece, okay? The biggest concern that I have with this whole conflict, you can argue the narrative back and forth from 1948 to 1967. The biggest place where we diverge, and I think most people diverge, is what happened. Why was the war fought in 1967? The Israeli claim is as follows: we were under imminent threat from these Arab countries. So therefore, based on that imminent threat, we decided to take a preventative step of bombing the Egyptian Air Force and the Syrian Air Force, thereby gaining air superiority. And then they moved ground troops and tanks across the territories through the Sinai, through the West Bank, up to the Jordan River, and up to the Golan Heights in Syria. That's what they did. That's what happened. So the entire world, including every other state in the world, including everyone said that was considered an illegal war of aggression. That was territory captured through aggressive war, and therefore it had to be returned. That was what was said. So the war wasn't started because Israel was attacked. Israel was not attacked. Israel did a preemptive invasion, very similar to what the United States did in 2003.
I
You
agree
can't
with
claim
that.
that someone's going to hurt you, so you go take their country, depose their leadership, and they claim you're defending yourself.
Would US do that to Mexico? If US thought that they were going to lose to Mexico, would they do a preemptive strike and take over Mexico?
The U.S. does it way before somebody.
I mean, the US does it to the whole of Latin America. They've done it in Panama, Nicaragua, everywhere. Preemptive strike.
Well, let me ask you this: I killed my cousin. Is it right for you to kill your cousin?
No, that's like Old Testament, eye for an eye.
There you go. You just made my point. Okay,
We should be kissing each other's cheek. We should be loving our enemies.
Exactly, but the one wrong doesn't make the other right. That's what I'm trying to say. You just made the U.S. It doesn't matter. The point is, it's all bad.
It's all bad. It's a complete mess. I mean, I just for 2 let's talk about the ICJ. What do you think about it? Because both sides are claiming victory, which I kind of agree with that. South Africa got a mini victory, and Israel got a huge victory that they didn't declare G-side. Yeah, the other is, what is the ultimate solution? I don't want to say F solution because that stirs up bad memories of mustache man in Germany. But what is are you a one-state man, below them, interpretation of the Arabs? What where do we go in 20 years time? My kids are 15, so when they are 35, 40 years old, are we still going to talk about this?
Right now, the political dynamics are such that the United States is providing economic, military, and diplomatic cover for the Israelis. Because of that, there's a reluctance on most leaders to intervene. And because of that reluctance, it's leading to an impasse that benefits the Israelis to do what they choose to do. And what they've chosen to do so far, by virtue of their actions and their words, is to further push into Gaza and further push into the West Bank with rabid settlers and the military and police protecting their actions and arming those same settlers so they can take over more and more property, unalive more and more Palestinians. And of course, we've seen what's been happening with the bombing and other military actions that they say are going towards getting militants, but really are going and getting civilians. Let's just be straight about it. Now, that's what's happening. I don't know what's going to continue to happen because a lot of it's political. So, for example, if the Israeli government continues to push Palestinians in Gaza further and further south and try to squeeze them out like a tube of toothpaste, I think there's going to be international condemnation, which we're already seeing. I don't believe your assessment of the wins comparatively, because this was step one of a two-step process. If you don't know how the genocide process works, they have
I
to,
know
it's like
it was
it's like a grand
by.
jury. They
I
have
know
to
that.
first
Yeah, I know.
make sure there's sufficient evidence to proceed to step two. Step two takes a long time. It's like a lengthy court case. It doesn't get solved in a week or 10 days.
Yeah.
It's going to be carefully studied and then adjudicated, and then we'll see what comes out of that process. But the problem with that whole process, forget about what happens, is that there's no teeth. There's no punitive aspect of it because there's not physical,
Yeah, exactly.
territorial control. So
Yeah.
therefore, to some, it may be meaningless on the Israeli side and the U.S. But I believe it's like a scarlet letter, and I believe that. And this is what I really. If you want to strip away all the stuff, you may say that I'm pro-Palestinian,
I
but
mean,
here's
for the
where
people
I'm
who don't
fair.
understand English, what do you mean by scarlet letter?
A scarlet letter is an old thing during the initial stages of the United States, where some woman was accused of having some sort of impure relationship in a
Yeah, I
community.
saw the
She was
movie.
branded with a letter that basically made her look like she was ostracized. It's being ostracized in public is what it is. So why do I mention that? If Israel was smart, in my opinion, towards its long-term stability,
So who is
you never know how
ostracized?
long you never know how long your big bully brother is going to be around to protect you. So if you act like a total, if you act with impunity for a period of time while you have the bully backing you up, if the bully isn't there,
So,
you're
so
going to
you
have a
believe
bad day
that
with
Israel is a little baby who needs a big bully USA to protect it. You believe that?
what I'm saying is that the fact that the U.S. is providing diplomatic, political, and military cover for Israel, as well as a lot of money, is a huge obstacle to this thing being taken a different course. And I'm not saying that Israel is some little baby child. They're certainly a very capable military and very strong force economically and militarily in the region. That's indisputable. However, absent the protection they have from the United States, especially in the UN, which, by the way, this would have been a totally different situation had the U.S. not been vetoing in the UN and not being able to stand behind protecting Israel from accountability with the ICJ and other entities. Let's just be real. Without that happening, this would be a totally different situation.
So you're a military guy. You're an ex-military guy, and at the rate we're going, let's take Gaza numbers: 30,000 civilians, and they say out of that 1/3, 10K. We are exactly 30,000. 10K are Hamas fighters. So at this rate, if they want to unalive all 50K Hamas fighters, they just have to unalive 200,000 civilians, and they can do that very slowly, very carefully, right under the nose of the ICJ. Give them interim reports, do reports every 28 days, and they win the war. In 1 year's time? So it's taken 4 months to unalive 10K Hamas fighters. This is all guesswork, completely guesswork. Nobody's there actually telling the numbers. And the Hamas H group fighters are somewhere between 30,000 and 50,000. So another 12 months.
I think it's a lot closer to 30 than 50.
Yeah. So some people say 30, some people say 50. But then they got the little cubs, training. They got 16-year-old, 17-year-old cubs, and they'll come of age, and soon. If you unalive a 17-and-a-half-year-old with an AK-47, AK-47 pew, technically you've unalived a child. But legally, because the UN sees anyone 0 to 18 as a child. And all they have to do is take the pew away. Oh, the child is gone. And there is a lot of propaganda I'm almost the opposite of you, Chip. What I see, I support on the Zionist Israeli side more. Whereas you, any rumor that criticizes Israel, you're willing to shout it from the rooftops. But for the other side, you need 25 different DNA samples on a 13-year-old child. You want to see forensic
I mentioned
evidence.
earlier that an article on both sides is the equivalent of not being sufficient for documentation. That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm not being critical.
But if the document says that they found
hold on. Listen, first of all, the audience is clamoring for you to move on. Not that I'm going to. I'll give you a couple more seconds, but you got to give me a chance to respond to these allegations. First of all, I'm not gaslighting because I have some sort of motivation. I don't know anybody from Israel. I don't know anybody from Palestine. I've just been watching this for a long time, and I've studied the dynamics. And in my opinion, which is an opinion, right? I'm somebody who tries to take a look at everything and make an opinion. You can take it or leave it. The reason I come to that opinion is because the things that have been happening in real time since I've been watching this have been horrible towards Palestinians. While there have been resistance things that have been horrible to Israelis, the vast and disproportionate amount of unaliving and damage has been done to Palestinians. That's just the truth. There's no way to argue the numbers. So look back at the numbers. If you add in the
So
current
more
numbers, it's even
Germans
more
died in
ridiculous.
Second World War. Are you saying the Germans were right?
This isn't Germany.
In World War II,
This isn't Germany.
less
This
British
isn't Germany.
less
This
British
is
people
not
died,
Germany. This is
but six
Israel
million
Palestine.
6 million Germans died. So the Germans were right in what they did.
Israel Palestine.
Yeah,
Palestine. We're talking about the Israeli-Palestine conflict, not U.S., China, Russia,
I know, but I'm
Germany,
making comparison.
Italy.
We have to compare it with something.
The two are
Okay, let's compare it with
completely
Vietnam War.
comparable.
Let's compare it with the Korean War. We have to compare it with something.
There's
I'm happy to compare it with
we
any
don't,
other war.
we don't.
So,
That's
so
the
this
thing.
is
That's
kind
the
of unique.
fallacy.
I know that.
That's
This is
the
a unique
fallacy.
conflict.
That's the fallacy of the argument, to try to force people to go into some sort of arbitrary comparison that doesn't compare. The dynamics of this conflict are totally different than Korea and in World War II. Completely
I
different
agree.
animals. So here's what I'm going to do. You've made some great points. Obviously, I'm not going to disparage anybody for what their point of view is and say they're gaslighting. Hey, you believe what you believe for whatever reasons you believe it. I've yet to meet a person that says, hey, I'm going to tell you what I believe on this issue, and guess what? I'm wrong. I've never heard somebody say that. So you believe what you believe. Hey, respect. And I believe what I believe because of the work I've put in and who I am as a person and what matters to me and how I see it. And that's my take. There's what's happened and what's happening, and there's interpretation. I have an interpretation. So do you. Let's do it again sometime when we don't have so many guests. I'm happy to have you back. Thanks for being here. Okay, I think we have Anger Tab was next. I hope I'm not getting this wrong.
I believe that's an accurate statement. You have to excuse me, my voice is going out.
Sure.
So you had initially invited me over here to come have these chats with you. Since you invited me, I kind of took a look at your content, went over some of the things you were posting. I don't think you're a horrible human being. I think you're doing your best to be on the right side of humanity, right? Human lives matter in kind of all instances. However, I also know that you took part in one of my live sessions where I addressed how much and I meant to tell you real quick, on all my live sessions, I'm getting between, like 600 to 1,000 people in there. And I don't use the term age group. I'm not sure why this is a thing anymore. I'm just doing it to respect your live session. I never do it, and it's never affected me. So take it as you will.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, just throwing it out there for the community. Now,
thank you.
With that being said, our goal is to stop civilian casualties to the best of our ability, right? And anybody that
No. What I think the goal is to have a ceasefire and have a cessation of hostilities that causes all the damage. I'm concerned about IDF soldiers, H group militant people, and civilians on both sides. You should be good as far as unmuting.
Sorry about that.
No, you should be good. Yeah, good. You're good.
All right. In order to have a ceasefire, both sides need to agree, correct?
There needs to be some political settlement to stop the violence, yes.
Okay. And as long as Hamas exists, there cannot be a ceasefire.
Well, put it this way, if someone is trying to extinguish a mindset, which is what the H group is based upon, the individual fighters are relatively irrelevant, because what's going to crop up, even if let's say it's 30,000 people, let's say right now you snap your fingers, they're gone. The same mindset does not go away of wanting to resist what's an injustice and an occupation and a blockade. So you can do whatever political settlement you want to try to do and try to extinguish people, but as long as they're under those variables, they're not going to stop feeling the way they're feeling. And that's what the resistance is born from, not out of abject hatred towards a group of people. So, that's the point of all.
What it's born from versus what they actually put in writing is two different things, right? I'm sure you're aware that H group has said that they want Palestine, which is defined from the river to the sea and so on within their charter, to be an Arab Islamic land. And that's what they're working towards.
They changed the language in 2017. They changed it in 2017.
That's directly from the 2017. No, I'm sorry, sir. That's directly from the 2017 charter.
Yeah,
an Arab Islamic land.
I'm sure that Israel wants to have all the territory that it goes from the river to the sea as well. And also further than that, there's plenty of people who believe that a greater Israel is what should be the case. But just because somebody wants something doesn't mean that's the... Just because somebody wants a broader objective doesn't mean they're not willing to agree with... Yeah.
Sorry about that. Netanyahu said he wants to be responsible for the security within the Gaza Strip from this point forward until they can figure it out, right? So I'm with you there, right? But my big issue is I go on people's words and I go on people's actions. Hamas's words, H group's words, are an Arab Islamic nation from the river to the sea, defined by some very clear borders in their 2017 charter, and accomplished by any means necessary, such as what we saw on October 7th. So even if we put an end to the current conflict inside of the Gaza Strip,
Yeah.
how do you guarantee that they stop and that doesn't occur again, even if they're given their own independent nation?
I think that, first of all, just to let you know, the H group is, first of all, not representative of the entire Palestinian people. That's important to understand. Secondly,
Correct.
not all people who live in the Gaza Strip support the H group. I
Correct.
believe why people were celebrating on the 7th was not because they support the unaliving of Israeli civilians or even harm in general coming to people. It was because there was something to break the status quo, which looks like it has no light at the end of the tunnel. The other thing I want to say is this: in terms of pragmatic politics, people say a lot of things. Republicans in our Congress say things that are never going to happen politically. So do Democrats. They want their way, and they want it all for themselves. But the art of politics is the art of compromise. It's it's a very messy process. And what the H group does specifically say in the charter, I'm going to research what you said, because when I read the whole thing in and I didn't see what you said, I have no reason to doubt you. But I'll take your word for it. But the point is, I think you're making the assumption that if there is a political settlement of some type, that there's no way ever to stop the idea of attacking Israel because of the desire you referenced. And I'm saying I don't believe that's the case, and here's why. They specifically did say that although they don't think it's fair and there shouldn't be the recognition of the state next door, which I can understand their reasons for not wanting to, they're willing to accept the pre-1967 borders for the establishment of an autonomous Palestinian state. And in return for that, what they would have to do, of course, politically, is to adhere to any security agreements which would alleviate the concerns of the Israelis along those lines. And I think that's a fair compromise. It's not completely fair, but it's a reasonable compromise for everyone to make. Here's the problem I see with that. The settlements in the West Bank are so pervasive and are so filled with so many Israelis that it's impossible and practical to do that unless you're going to have these baby Bantustans somehow collected up into a state and somehow dealing with the fragmentation of the contiguous territory. I don't know how you do that. And that's a big question. And the other thing about the deals is that the problem with the Israeli side, as far as I can see it, is they say they want security, but they're never willing to give up control. They always have to have every little element of this tied up in a neat bow as far as them controlling it. I don't think anybody from the Palestinian side should be expected to accept a deal that is completely void of self-autonomy.
So I agree with you. Palestinians need some sort of actual representation, because as long as people remain in that position, they're always going to want to rise up, right? However, not only did they put it in writing, they also showed actions towards that. Now, if I was a father, right? If I was a father and I had somebody that was threatening my child and saying all of those things, that put it in writing and was willing to die for what they believed in, and then they had actions and steps that they took forward, and I have a responsibility to protect my child because the government has a responsibility to protect their people. How can I reasonably tell my people that we can trust them now, that what happened will not repeat itself? We can rip down the Iron Dome. Do you think that would be a good call if they had peace? Israel could disassemble the Iron Dome? Like if they came up with that?
So I think, let me just make sure I understand what you're saying first. And by the way, there's some sweeping or something that people have asked me for you to mute in the background. I don't know if you can clear the noise. But just to let you know, so I think, do you believe that fair is fair? Do you believe that fair is fair, Anvita?
Fairness is defined by those who believe. It's an opinion, really. Fairness is an opinion.
Do you think the same standard should be applied to two groups in terms of fair analysis?
Obviously, yes.
Okay, good. So you mentioned the fact that how can you be assured that the political solution you're going to tell your kids about is potentially putting them in harm's way, right? That's not something you think is responsible to do, right?
No, it's not.
Okay, let's look at it from the Palestinian side. So let's just say it's the PA. Let's say the H group is gone tomorrow. It's all Palestinian Authority or some third group that's supposed to be looking out for the interests of their people. If you look at the behavior of the Israeli government, let's just take after 1967. Forget about all the other stuff that took place before that, which was more horrific, I believe. But the steady and slow erosion of the ability to have homes, have them knocked down, have people be shot, people be destroyed through raids at night, people being imprisoned arbitrarily with administrative detention for no reason other than they may be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Why should they agree to a settlement, not trusting that won't continue?
For death. So when you want to have some sort of a what do you want to call it? Not debate, but when you're trying to get concessions, right? If I need you to concede to something, generally speaking, I need to be arguing from a position of advantage. And right now, they don't have it. They don't. So Israel has.
That's the whole point of all. That's the point of all this. That's
Understand. In wanting to move towards them having decent representation, right? Because the goal really is to live in peace. Everybody wants to live in peace. You know, peace in the Middle East has been screamed for frickin' since the day I was born. I'm a little younger than you. I'm about 4 years old.
Yeah.
But as long as that group exists, they will never have it because of their stated goals. And for Israel to draw an assumption that if for some reason they concede, it will magically stop is lunacy. Because on the flip side of the coin, the same thing you talk about, where you say that, you know, look at what the Palestinians have been put through. Totally understand. But on the flip side of the coin, look at what the Israelis have been put through themselves from their perspective and their point of view. So neither side is at the table able to concede that they believe that there will be peace if they have peace, if they agree on peace. Each side thinks something's bad going to come.
Who's been expanding territorial-wise over the last 50 years?
And how's that happened?
What's actually happened?
Israel has definitely expanded territory-wise.
Let's put that out. Okay, so that's what's actually happening, okay? Who has condemned the settlements across the world? Has the United States condemned them?
Again, I do not believe. So to answer your question directly, because I do, yes, the United States has condemned those things, particularly Joe Biden has came out.
Why do you think they could just? What do you think the rationale is behind the United States condemning them? If you had to guess,
politics. Like I do believe that order that Joe Biden put out last week, the executive order, is 1,000% based on politics because he's losing support in his demographics for supporting Israel, and so in some weird attempt to try to get a little bit of a support page back, he did that. And I do not believe just because, you know, my nation's representation says something just like you do, right? I know I've seen videos of you talking about Iraq. You don't think Iraq was a just war, right?
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
Right. So I disagree with that. Okay. And so does your government. And there's different people in our government that all disagree across the board. So just because my government says something doesn't make it applicable. It doesn't. There's lots of governments throughout all of history. The United States government in the past has been responsible for slavery.
That's a fair statement, of course. Yeah, I don't argue that. That's common sense. The point I'm trying to make is this. I think the reason why the United States diplomats over many, many administrations, this isn't unique to any one particular, this is happening since the Carter administration. They've spoken very clearly to the issue. They said, listen, one of the largest impediments to the chance for there being peace is the increased building of settlements in the West Bank, which the world, other than Israel, believes to be an illegal military occupation from territory gained through an aggressive foreign war that wasn't necessary to begin, but did because of Israeli justifications.
Okay, but again, they were fighting long before those settlements took place, right?
So who's they was fighting?
There was fighting long before the settlements and expansions.
The settlements began because of the illegal war that was waged by Israel, because before then the territory that was allocated to the West Bank was not being settled.
And this is why I disagree with you. I don't think it's an illegal war. I don't, like you and me, for instance, right? If I believe you're going to harm me reasonably, a reasonable person standard would believe that you are going to kill me, right? Yeah. You're going to unalive me. A reasonable person would believe that. I do not have to wait for you to shoot me in order to fight back. And to suggest that. And to suggest that is intellectually dishonest.
Would you believe the word of a former Israeli prime minister speaking to this? Would you believe their word? Would they have a reason to lie about it?
I honestly would not, based on a lot of information.
Look up Menachem Begin, who was the prime minister back during the Carter administration and early Reagan years. Look up Menachem Begin justification for 1967 war, and read the quote that he said.
Okay, I will do that.
And you'll find very clearly that he said there was no imminent threat. We used it as a justification to take territory we had aims towards.
Okay.
So that's why I believe it's indicative of the fact that it was the case, because somebody from their side at the time it happened said that. So I believe them and they have no reason to say that other than to agree to it. Look at David Ben-Gurion.
Are you religious?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so there was people that walked side beside Jesus and spoke of all the miracles he did. But yet you still refuse to believe. So just because somebody says something doesn't make it true.
He's the prime minister of Israel, and he said that's why
he's the son of God. What's your point? In my view, Jesus Christ, son of God. Correct.
So you're saying that because people who testified in the Bible to the existing of Jesus and me not embracing that particular religion negates the fact that the prime minister of Israel, the former prime minister, said that the reason they invaded was because of the fact that they wanted the territory?
Do people have do people have alternative motivations for saying things?
Yeah, I'm going to go with believing what the person says in this case over doubting what they said. If you want to doubt it, that's your prerogative. I'm not going to
Because
use
it fits your
other
narrative.
equivalencies. What's that?
Probably because it fits your narrative. That's why you choose to believe it. If we
No,
go
no, no,
back,
no, 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 no. Let me push back on that. If there was an Arab leader who did the same exact thing to Jewish refugees who were living in the occupied territory that they moved in and took because of whatever perception the Arabs had about the security issues, I would condemn the Arab government. And I would believe the Arab leader who said, this is why I did it. That's not my narrative. That's my understanding of the power dynamics, the oppressor versus the oppressed. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think
I
that's
don't.
fair.
Okay. I mean, I understand your point of view. I don't think we're gonna have common ground there. So
What about what I just said is serving a narrative?
that it serves the narrative towards Israeli oppression and land expansion and land grabs and all that other stuff.
What I'm saying is that if another group of people were doing this, let's say it was the Zimbabweans doing it to let's say it's the Eritreans doing it to the Ethiopians. That's those adjacent territories. I would be critical of the Ethiopians doing the same thing to the Eritreans under the same circumstances, same exact history, same everything from A to Z. It's not that I have a narrative around it. It's that I think any reasonable person who cares about people not being in harm's way for long periods of time at no fault of their own has to see it that way. They can understand the anger of the other side for being pushed back on. From their point of view as the occupying power, the British didn't want the American colonists to be pushing back against their rule either, but they called them terrorists because they did. It's always the occupying dominant force that tries to frame the narrative in their favor. That's
Yeah,
the point. And
I've heard
I'm trying to push back
I've heard that
against
video of
narrative.
you arguing that point. And I'm sorry, it's just this one thing we're not going to agree on. And I mean, it's not just you and me. There's a lot of people that don't agree on this subject.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of that fact. Yeah,
So
of
let's
course.
move on to
Many-
something present day, if you don't mind.
Say again?
Can we move on to something present day that we actually
Related to the conflict, right?
correct?
Yeah, please.
So 30,000 people unalived inside of the Gaza Strip. How many of those are attributed to H group?
I don't know for sure. The numbers that I've heard stated from the Israeli side is as many as 10,000, maybe 12,000. The number that I've heard from the inside of Gaza is unclear. I've not been able to ascertain the numbers that are spoken from that side.
I want to assume for a second, all right, that 10,000 that Israelis talking about that they were able to take out, that's not even a part of that number. I'm talking about from H group munitions inside of the Gaza Strip. How many of those deaths are attributed to H group? Let's assume that all 30,000 are civilians. How many?
You're
is
saying
H group
you're saying rocket fire that didn't work properly and it came back and harmed civilians inside of Gaza. Is that what you're referring to?
No, the ones that work perfectly normal, that they're shooting unaimed. Same thing with their mortar system. Same thing with
is
their
it
mortar systems. Between
Intentional
their
or
mortars,
intentional or unintentional? That's what I'm trying to clarify.
it's going to be unintentional. Obviously, they have intentions of taking out the IDF. That's why they're shooting them. I don't think they're launching them at at
So
the hospitals to blame on the IDF.
What would cause them to fire them improperly? What would be was it just incompetence? Was it the faulty equipment? Both?
No, okay. So, for example, the rockets are set up on improvised rocket launchers with no way to aim them. The propellant's homemade, and so it burns at inconsistent rates. So you're not going to get accuracy out of it. Mortar systems. You were a tanker, correct? A tank platoon commander.
Yeah, I am very familiar with how mortars work.
Okay,
yeah.
so you have a sight. Obviously, you have aiming sticks. You have other things when you're firing them beyond line of sight. There's a couple other ways you could do it with some smaller mortar systems like 60 millimeters and stuff. But in no video ever that H group has released, in all of their propaganda videos, in no video have they properly been aiming those mortars at all. They have no way of knowing where they're going. I saw one video of H group. It was released, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, where the gentleman firing the mortar system, it actually sank into the ground between 6 to 12 inches. There's no way of accurately knowing where that mortar's going.
Do you think that the people who serve in the H group are abject morons and idiots? In terms of their intelligence and their ability to function as a fighting force, not their ideology, but their capability.
No, actually, I have pretty deep.
Okay.
So I actually have,
would
after
just
fighting
let
the
you know,
Taliban and
that's
ISIS and
not my
everybody
argument.
else.
You would have to be an absolute moron. You can tell based on where the sun is shining, for Christ's sakes, what direction the enemy is versus your own people. And so I would believe that one of the priorities of any military fighting force is to try to reduce the chances or the likelihood of firing into your own population. I believe Israel had one incident that I'm aware of where the Iron Dome misfired and hit an Israeli hospital. But that's one of tens of thousands of interdictions of missiles or rockets. It's very rare, I believe, that stuff like that happens, and it certainly probably isn't purposeful.
So, an example. They had a 120 millimeter mortar system set up at a very steep angle. All right, somewhere probably around 70 degrees based on the video. Very steep angle, and they were shooting at charge 3. They don't have the knowledge on how to properly employ those weapon systems. And so it's not that they're stupid, they don't know.
I disagree with that, but that's okay if that's your perception of it. And by the way, I think there may have been errors. I don't know the exact facts on the ground. There are things I do know, and there's things I don't know. I don't know for sure what you're saying is true or isn't because I don't have any way to verify it. And if your interpretation is that they made poor tactical decisions based on a lack of training or awareness of the weapon systems, that's an interpretation. But I don't know where the results of the rounds went to verify that they were indeed falling on their own people.
So you can verify this by simply looking at H Group's propaganda videos that they put out on an almost daily basis now, which include mortar fire. And not a single video, and not one single video I have seen that H Group has released, and I look every single day, do hours of research a day, and not one single video have they actually had any sort of sight system on them whatsoever. And
You don't
you're
have
right,
to.
by the sun, you do
mortars,
need
you don't
to
have
make
to.
them accurate. Even
No,
with
you don't.
sights, have you called for fire before?
They're rotated at certain degrees based on launch angles and distance. That's how mortars work. I've actually fired a mortar. Have you fired a mortar before?
A crap ton, yeah. I've called for fire and I've hung rounds
Good.
and I've
I'm
adjusted
glad
them.
how they work then. They're adjusted based on angle.
Correct. Not
Yeah.
more than angle, though. It's way more than angle. You have to have the appropriate elevation dialed
Well,
on, and you have to have the appropriate thing, and you have to have the
type
appropriate
and the
torch.
angle it's the round type and the angle of the tube that creates the distance and the trajectory.
Right. And how do they aim that? How do you get that? How do you get
They
the angles accurately?
adjust it with forward observers.
Okay, it's adjusted with forward observers, right? To get accurate adjusting fire in order to bracket, you adjusted it with forward observers. But on the side of the gun, where the tube's at, in order to get that appropriate angle, because the mortar tube shoots at such long distances, 7 kilometers for 120.
Yeah.
Right? So those minor deflections, I mean very minor deflections, tiny little bits of a degree, make a huge difference downrange to where that round's going to impact.
Yeah.
Angles
So
over
let's
distance.
follow the logic of what you're saying. So let's say you've been living in Gaza for, let's say, in terms of the blockade since 2006. So you're an H Group militant, and obviously they train like any fighting force trains, right? So I think they're pretty well trained actually. So, but maybe in this example you say they aren't. So the Gaza Strip isn't very big from in terms of its width. And the places where it typically fires into, if it fires to the south and to the east, which is where most of the kibbutzim are and other structures that are nearby where mortars can reach more readily, they should know over time, based on where they are in the strip, where they need to put the angle of their own mortars to be able to fire them. I would think that would be highly irresponsible for their command and control structure not to have that trained into their troops. In fact, I don't think it is trained into their troops improperly. And I think the assessment you're making is, I don't know for sure because I don't have it verified, but it sounds absurd to me is what I'm trying to say.
So it can sound absurd, right? I've also got military experience. Medically retired in 2018 after 16 years, retired as a Green Beret. Got over 4 years in combat. I was an infantryman prior to being a Green Beret. I know how these systems work and I know how they're employed.
Yeah,
And there's
I believe you. I just don't think what you're saying is accurate.
zero way to guarantee where those rounds are going to go. Even if they have a forward observer downrange adjusting those rounds, when they make that adjustment, they don't know if they've over or under corrected for either of those adjustments.
Yeah,
So
but they're not firing on targets that are 15 inches on the other side of the security fence.
correct.
firing at
It's an
targets
area
that
fire weapon. That's
Yeah,
the
that's
problem.
the point though, is they're going to err on the side of patch the targets first and then adjust back towards their border. They're not going to fire stuff that'll fall, 800 to 1,000 meters inside their border and then adjust outward.
So here's the problem. Because they're firing them inaccurately and adjusting fire inaccurately, there is no way of telling how many innocent civilians they have unalived. None.
Yeah, well, I know one thing. Most mortars don't bring down 20-story buildings.
There is valid military targets assessed for every building that gets dropped. And if there's
Okay.
not, right, you have to, number one, in order to say that that building shouldn't have been dropped, you have to be the individual on the ground that has on-the-ground intelligence and assessment coupled with other intelligence of what's going on. And right
Do you
now,
think
neither of us.
do you think that beachfront property is something that people would aspire to own?
Absolutely.
Do you think that if I was trying to sell you one in the Sahara Desert, you'd be interested in buying it?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at moving out of the United States. So if there was
To
a
the
nice,
se-
peaceful place, if I had a good beachfront property, it would depend
In the
on
mi-
the economy and lots of other things. But yeah,
If a realtor approached you right now and said, "Hey, I got this great deal for you. It's half price. It's a beachfront property in the middle of the Sahara Desert," what would you say to the person trying to sell you that?
It depends on the economy around it and
No,
what,
no,
like,
no,
how
no,
my
no.
retirement money and
I
everything's going to
said
go. I
a,
would have lots of
I said
questions.
I said a beachfront property in the middle of the Sahara Desert where there's no water. What would you say to that realtor?
Oh, excuse me. Excuse me. That's silly. Go
Of
ahead.
course, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying to you about the argument you just made about the targeting systems. That's silly.
That's not silly. It's a
It's very
fact.
silly.
It's like
Okay,
trying to
let's
shoot
do
a
this.
sniper rifle without.
Let's do this. Let's do this. Okay. I disagree. I'm not going to mute you. I'm going to leave you in the thing. We just have to give other people a chance to talk for a sec. Hold on. We got to talk. Hold on. Hold on. Brenda's going to be next. We had a pretty good interchange there. Thank you for your point of view. I admit I could be totally. Hold on. Hold on. Brenda gets to go next. Then it's Wolfman, and then so we got to talk. Just please, I'll take turns. I promise. I'm fair. We can agree to disagree on some of those points about training and technicians. It could be that in some instances they misfire and they have poor training. I don't know for sure. And maybe they don't know how to use certain weapon systems and they F up. But I do know this, they don't take down buildings. And I literally have on my phone that I'm looking at right now, I have dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of large scale munitions and artillery coming into Gaza from Israel that down entire buildings. That to the average human being, whether you want it to be or not, and I can't say for sure there isn't Israeli targeting systems going on, but my gut tells me, and I think most people's guts tell them there isn't, because militants don't stand on the fourth floor of a residential building waiting to be hit. They just don't do that. There's no need to do that. They have tunnels. So you're going to come up, do what you got to do to engage the enemy, either on the ground or using the systems you described, and you go back down because you can. It'd be idiotic to stay inside of the building and stay as a firing base.
There's
Unless you're
videos
maybe
of
a
them
sniper.
doing that.
Hold on. And there may be videos of people using civilian structures, but it's not the tens of thousands that Israel has leveled. There's just no way, even at a sheer probability. You're never going to get me to believe, or most people that have eyeballs, and I did a video on this like the 5 days into this. Do you believe your own two eyes or do you believe what you're hearing? That's a fair point to bring up. I don't believe the argument for 1 second about the targeting systems and the legal channels of approval and the militants being targeted or any of that crap. Israel has a history of saying one thing and doing another. They talk about it all the time in the West Bank. Forget about Gaza, just the years in the West Bank, all the crap they say about charging people of terrorism and they're in jail and they didn't do anything. Or saying someone was a terrorism and they shoot the person. It's just it's a silly thing. I'm so sick of it for people that believe that garbage. And listen, it's not anybody's fault for believing it. It's just the pervasive nature of how the communication systems work from the Israeli point of view. It's just it's beyond pathetic in terms of how much they lie. Let me give Brenda a chance to pipe in. Brenda, how you feeling? How you doing today?
Hi, Chip. Thanks for having me back. I am going to sound a little winded because my toddler is chasing me, but it's okay. So I just wanted to offer a perspective to all of the Israel supporters that keep talking about how, you are gaslighting us, you are, brainwashing us into agreeing with you. Because I want to offer the perspective that up until October 7th, most of the world was actually supporting Israel. Most people had no idea what was actually happening. The propaganda, the programming has been working. And the thing is that society is changing so much in so many different aspects, not just this situation. Like everything in our life, we're just being squeezed so tightly that everybody's starting to wake up to what's actually controlling the world, which is,
Yeah.
a lot of different powers at be. And so the idea that we're going to listen to you or we're going to see one video and then all of a sudden our entire mindset is just going to be switched like that those are people who don't understand cognitive and developmental processes. Like I'm an educator and I've been an educator for over 20 years. I have studied thoroughly the brain. The brain does not change its mind, unless there's like some traumatic events like that. But then for a lot of people who have had, it's sort of like the nail that broke the camel's back, because a lot of us have been just having so many things being piled on top of us, so much of our cognitive dissonance that we've ignored, and then one thing happens and then all of a sudden we're all awake. And so it's not something that we can just say, well, now because of what happened on October 7th, now everybody is against Israel just because. No, it doesn't work that way. Programming, it just doesn't work that way. And so I wanted to offer that perspective to everybody, to the people arguing against us that are being sort of like brainwashed. It's impossible. We can't. The world is just so different now, and everybody is waking up for a reason. And so I think those people who have not yet woken up, who are still supporting just the atrocities that are happening, it's because your cognitive dissonance is not allowing you to see what is actually happening. And you, there's a philosopher, I don't remember who it was, but I remember him posting a while back about how it said that if you still believe the same things that you believed 10 years ago, you are intellectually plateaued. So, think about, for those people who have been on these, personal development journeys, like I am a completely different person than I was 10 years ago. And, for me, this whole situation has been very cathartic because I've never been able to speak up against Palestine. I went to Palestine in 2007, and I had a horrible experience where I was detained by the IDF for half of a day. All kinds of terrible things happened to me because I'm a Latina that looks Arab and that has an Arab last name because my dad's great-grandfather was a Lebanese man that immigrated to Mexico from Lebanon. And so we have this last name. But, I have no connections with the Arab world whatsoever. I traveled there because I studied international relations in university, where I went full in with the intent of working for the US government. When I came out, I was studying international relations. I wanted to go into the State Department or FBI or something like that. But then I had a professor who was from Oman, who was just rebellious enough back in the early 2000s that he taught us a little bit more than what was in the textbooks. And so I actually got to learn about what US foreign policy is all about and what we've done throughout the Latin world, the Middle East, and all over the world. And that, of course, was one of the first steps in me waking up. And then I traveled to Palestine, and I was pro-Palestine, but I had no idea. I had no idea until I actually experienced it. I came back to the US, I wrote my senior thesis project, and it was called A Day as a Palestinian. And this was in 2007. So I've been aware of this issue for such a long time, but I have seen the cognitive dissonance in people that I've tried to talk to about this for decades, basically. And it's just, there's always been a wall. And that wall has fallen. And I want to say to those of you who are still those of you who are still believing everything that is being fed to you, like you need to wake up. You can't be thinking that all of us are brainwashed, that what you're seeing is not what you're seeing, because we are living basically a 1984. If nobody has read that book or seen that movie and you're still not sure of propaganda, what is being done, just go and watch 1984. It's a really old movie, or read the book. But the movie itself shows you that, like, the fanaticism of what you see now, it's very, very much the situation that we are in now is exactly the movie 1984. So I just want to invite everybody to just kind of open your minds and to just realize that we're all from one people. Like, there is no such thing as Arabs, Jews, Muslims. Like, those are all been invented by man. So just please, everybody, just stop the fighting and then just wake up. So that was the only thing I wanted to say, and I gotta go because my toddler's chasing me.
All right, Brenda, thanks for being here. I appreciate that. Thanks for your point of view. Yeah, I think that the more people dig deep into this, without trying to, take sides, or maybe they probably were. What I had known about this back in 1989, before I learned what Brenda did, was that Israel was our friend. It was a safe place for Jewish people who had their own homeland, which is a great thing. And that there was these really horrible people that live around them, and all they want to do is attack them and drive them into the sea and unalive Jewish people, just like the second Holocaust. That's what I knew. That's what I'd heard. And back when I was younger, we only had 3 TV stations. Cable TV wasn't even out yet, believe it or not. And then it just came out when I was in my early teens. And even then, we just had like CNN and maybe, one other channel. It wasn't much. So we didn't get a very broad view of things. And of course, before social media, we got whatever the media was, we got whatever was wanted to give to us. And other than 1982, from my understanding, when the conflict in Lebanon was talked about in more stark terms, because it was just so outrageous what the Israelis did in terms of their invasion. Other than that, we've gotten a very pro-Israeli view of this for most of our lives. And so most Americans, first of all, it's not on their radar. Most people focus about their day-to-day life, obviously. And most people have no clue. And now they have a clue, and they're kind of like angry. And I was perplexed by this when I first found, like, what? this can't be true, right? This seems horrible. Why could this not be? Why wouldn't I know this? And then you're just like, damn. And then when you look more into it, it just seems worse and worse and worse. And it's not gaslighting. I mean, like I said, if the script was flipped, I'd make the same criticism, but it would be of Arabs. I mean, it's the same, it's no different. It's the behavior and the power dynamics, not the narrative I want to have. I really, not that I don't care about all sets of people, but I really could care less in analyzing a situation who I'm analyzing. It's just trying to understand what's really going on as best I can. I could get it wrong, and I can understand how other people have their other point of view. I may have a different point of view had I come up in a belief system that was similar to theirs. And I probably did in the United States based on how I came up here, right? We're all a product of our experiences, the media, school, parents, all that stuff. And like I said earlier today, I've never met somebody that says, hi, I'm Chip. I have this belief system and I know I'm wrong, right? Everyone thinks they're right? That just makes sense. And then hopefully, if you're open-minded, you're willing to shift your point of view according to what you learn. And, hopefully you can get to the truth or close to it as best we can. I just want everybody to know my normal schedule for doing this. I'm Chip Barnes. I'm an Army vet. Some people may not have met me before or seen me here on TikTok. I've been on for a little under 4 months, just on social media. And I started doing this because, I started 2 days after the conflict, but I didn't talk about the conflict right away. I talked about some other issues about, global politics and stuff. And about maybe 4 or 5 days in the job, I started talking about it. And so then it my account started to take off because people could tell I kind of knew something about it. But then I got banned. And then I started a brand new one. And then 2 weeks later, same thing, banned. And then the third one was 2 days and then banned. And then the last one was for 2 hours. And then, so I figured maybe I can't do my work on TikTok. But then my first account came back for some reason. I have no idea why. So that's been my unusual journey on TikTok. So I've tried to be very careful with the things I say and do. So it's a very odd system. But anyway, so I'm an Army vet. I served in the first Persian Gulf War, and I was on the front lines in a tank unit. So I have seen some of this stuff. I'm not a military expert, but I do know a lot about the experiences that I had. I went to airborne school where you jump out of an airplane 5 times and all that stuff. So, I kind of know what it's like, but I don't know everything by a long stretch. I listen to people like Scott Ritter and Colonel Douglas McGregor and others like that, from whom I get lots of information that I don't know. I don't know much about a lot of this stuff, but I try to parse it and share it back in a way that I think is reasonable. And the other thing I try to do, if you don't know my style, is when I bring guests up, I try to keep it manageable. So it's not like Jerry Springer. I don't let people yell at each other. We keep it civil, no personal attacks, and try to stay on topic and try to get to, and listen, the good thing is some evidence was talked about again today for the alleged atrocities. I gave them my Telegram information. If somebody sends me something, I'll look at it later. And if it turns out I see it, I'll tell you, hey, I saw this. I hadn't seen proof of this. Now I've seen proof. Here it is. That's fair, right? That's being open-minded. But reading an article where somebody says they talked to so-and-so and that person said they saw their cousin who said this, that's not evidence. That's hearsay and conversation. Now, it may be accurate or it may not be. I just have no way to tell. And that's the point I'm making. So you have to make a judgment call, right? Some things you're never going to get specific evidence. You're going to have to make a judgment call. So that's what I try to do. I try to be that. I go live 6 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from 8 p.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Eastern. And then I also go on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday from 2 p.m. from 12 noon until usually 2 p.m. longer if I'm able. Today I have to leave in about 15 or 20 minutes because I have an appointment that I have to get to. So I can go a little longer. I know people are waiting. So Wolfman, let's bring you in. Oh, one last thing. These are recorded. So if you came in midway, you want to hear what happened, this will be up on my YouTube and my Rumble channels, which you can access via a link in my link tree. It just says Linktree Chip Barnes. If you click on that, it'll take you to my list of other stuff I have. So you check that out. Please follow me there if you don't mind. And then also, if you're from outside the U.S. and you're listening to this, they don't let the link be there. It's clickable. So you have to go. I wrote it in my bio. So you have to type that into a web browser. And it's not clickable. You have to type it in and then hit enter. But it'll take you to the same place. If you so choose, if you like the style I have, I'm doing this not quite full time. I do some other work, but I'm doing this a lot more than the time than I used to. So if you want to help out, like you all have to pay bills. I'm not someone who's looking to make money, but you go to your job and you make enough to pay your bills, and that's all I'm trying to do too. And the last time I heard somebody say, you're doing this for money. Well, you go to your job for money. I mean, we all do some work to try to make pay. So in that regard, I'm accepting small donations, and I have a Patreon, which is $5 a month. And I generally do about 80 to 100 hours of content a month, including my videos and my lives. So if that's not sufficient for $5, I don't know. If you can afford it, please help. If you can't, no big deal. Anyway, let's get back to the conversation here. We have Wolfman. How you doing today?
I'm very well. Thank you for your time. And I want to thank you for your service. I did not know until today that you served in the military. You are a man of dignity and honor, not because you served elsewhere in the Persian Gulf or the Arab Gulf or whatever, but because you are a man of principle. And if you weren't, you would not be doing what you do for the meager amount of $5 or what have you. I know there is a labor of love involved for all of us, and this is why I tenaciously wait just to say these words. I'm not here to praise you, but I want to thank you for shifting the paradigm and enforcing it from your vantage point. And this is a great thing to do, because I heard Joy and Amanda, and there's a great contrast between the two. One ascertains and enforces ideas, and the other keeps questioning you and moves from one platform to another in a diversion fashion, as though there is like some kind of playbook they read from. And I hate this playbook because it's so obsolete and outdated, and they bombard you with questions that are meaningless. So this is what, if you want to save the worst for last, probably you have done today. You kept me until the end. I don't see anyone else in the queue. But I see you care for your cat and dog, and you are an awesome human being, and I want to thank you personally for this. Keep up the good work.
Let me, I don't want to burst your bubble, okay? I always like to say, if you're following me long enough, I'm going to either say something or do something, or maybe both, that you don't like. And I've done that before, and I have to own that when I make mistakes, and I've done it recently. So there are some videos floating around that are saying all sorts of things about me. Some are saying I never served, I'm lying, I was dishonorably discharged, I have made fake accounts to go say bad things about people, disrespectful things to people who are LGBTQ or trans or whatever. All this stuff is circulating. I did say some things on Twitter, though, that were completely inappropriate. So I have to own that. And if you see the video, I don't hide from the mistakes I made. I try to say, yeah, I screwed up badly, and therefore you have to try.
So I don't have this X or Twitter, as you call it, and I'm not there to scrutinize what you said. I say a lot of bad things. If you read the comments I write, sometimes they burst of anger and all that, and I regret. But at the end, I say to myself, if he gives me a chance to speak one-on-one, and this is a dialogue as opposed to just one unidirectional message, which can be avoided, but also can be misread and meaningless per se. And you pointed this out when someone said, how can you trust the Palestinian by signing a peace deal? Well, give it a chance. Give it a chance, because this was not tried before. And I think they will keep their word. So far, the other side, the one, according to the anger man who served as a Green Beret, allegedly, said that, the Israelis are at the vantage point. Well, unfortunately, the tide has shifted, and the reputation is horrible in the world. I am a former Jew, as I told you in the past. Perhaps you don't remember, but I abandoned all these Zionist ideas because not only they are obsolete, but because they fill my life and room with so much hatred, and put me at an elitist position that is meaningless and it's stupid. So when I went down from that ivory tower, I felt relieved, and suddenly so much space opened, and I absorbed all that love inside, and I exchanged it. Every time after October 7, when people who know me see me, they smile, and they don't dislike me, as I think Joy claimed that there's anti-Semitism or whatever term on the rise. Contrary to that, when they find out who you are and what you stand for, they welcome you. This is a human thing. When you come and attack, yesterday I saw on TikTok some small boy with a kippah spitting at a priest in Jerusalem, and I was outraged. I said, how could he be so hateful at this young age? This is not right. Somebody has to educate these poor young people to embrace love somehow. Give it a shot. And that's my message for today. Thank you all. And I appreciate your help, Chip. Have a good day.
Of course. Thanks for being here. Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing your point of view, and thanks for being an honest person. Put it this way. Listen, to be fair, everyone has their point of view, and being disrespectful to people who disagree, I think doesn't work, doesn't help. Everyone gets to where they get to over time, and I think the best anybody can do is share resources and ideas and let people do what they're going to do with them in their time. And just like when someone's had, not that this is the same, but just when somebody's going through like an addiction or whatever pattern they're in, and you can't make, like someone smoking, for example, you can't tell somebody to stop smoking. They're going to have to find it in their heart to make the decision to do it in their time and space when it's right for them. And the way that I try to engage with people is, yeah, you can put out all the arguments and stuff like that, but I don't try to convince people. I try to share information that hopefully provides the context that I've come to understand. With that in mind, this is a great thing to be able to share resources, because a lot of people have, thought long and hard about this, and, we're still having the conversation, but there's a couple of resources I'm going to mention. One is it's a documentary. You can watch it free on YouTube. I know you probably know a lot of this stuff, but you probably don't know all of it, and it's not pleasant to watch, but at least it tells you all the stuff that goes on, or most of it. It's hard to understand what the Palestinians go through. I think a lot of people don't understand it. I don't think most people are bad people. I think most people are a product of their programming. And he just mentioned the fact that there was young people in Israel that are spitting on Christian priests, which I've seen all sorts of examples of people who have been conditioned to hate Arabs and whether they be Islamic or Christian, or Muslims and Christians. So that is something that's often alleged against people who live in Gaza, that the age group indoctrinates the children and they're taught to hate Jewish people from birth, and therefore that's their whole life mission, is to get the Jews. And I find that's projection. And I'm not saying it never happens. Like any other small groups of people, you have the extremes that do certain things when they bring their kids up. It happens everywhere. But as far as it being widespread throughout the community, I think it's way more widespread in certain parts of Israel than it is inside of Gaza or the West Bank, as far as I can tell. But who knows? Bottom line is, I don't want anybody being indoctrinated from birth to hate anybody just because of who they are. I think most people don't like people because of what they do, right? They get angry that someone wronged them, and then they want to, make it right somehow. Maybe sometimes out of pure revenge, which I think is not the best way. But if somebody's making it impossible for you to have a decent life, and they're just completely stepping on your neck with a big boot, as I've used as a reference, figuratively, you want out from under the boot. Just normal, right? So for people to say, well, they don't have a boot on their necks, they've just been attacking us, so for security reasons we have to do. No. You've taken their land, you've pushed them off of it, you've made them miserable, you've done everything under the sun to, including unaliving them, destroying their homes. You'll see it. Watch Life in Occupied Palestine on YouTube. That's what I was talking about. Life in Occupied Palestine. You'll see for yourself. And the reason why I think this is fairly portrayed, it's not some Palestinian propaganda thing as was referred to about the military. This is a young Jewish American who traveled from America over to the West Bank. Her family had raised her to say that, the arguments we've been hearing today from the other folks who share the other side of this position. And she believed that none of this was going on. And when she went and saw it firsthand, she was aghast. She was like, just like I was surprised when I learned in 1989 that everything I'd been told wasn't quite so. Same experience. So if you can share with people who are, and by the way, the people that I think are best to engage with are people that are somewhat in the middle. They're not quite sure. I don't know much. I've sort of learned. That's the person you want to give this to. Someone who's really hardened. It's like the person who needs to quit smoking, but there's just no talking about it because they just don't want to go there. And that's okay. It's okay to let somebody stay where they are. But, it is what it is. People are going to do what they're going to do. The problem I have is when the media systems that are controlled by the big money interest and those who have special interest groups misinforms or doesn't inform the public of key context that then makes it hard for people to understand something. I think that's wrong. And the media should serve the public, not corporations or people's special interests, right? But it happens everywhere. It happens especially in the United States. So let me share with you another resource that's good as far as Gaza goes. There's an independent journalist named Abby Martin, and she went to Gaza and did a documentary called Gaza Fights for Freedom. Again, also free to watch on YouTube. She has a site on YouTube called The Empire Files. And if you're not following Abby Martin on The Empire Files, please do. She's got so much great content. She's such a compassionate but really hardworking person that gets to a lot of great issues, including the Israel-Palestine issue. She's got a little video called Palestine 101. So if somebody has no clue That's a good one to start with as far as just a quick primer. But if you're a reader, read Israeli scholar Ilan Pappé. Read his book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. You know, he's an Israeli Jewish person who realized his Zionist programming and upbringing was garbage. You know, it was a lie. And when he started to research all this, again, epiphanies, these little explosions in your mind go off like, what? And then you have to be truthful. You know, you can continue to maintain a narrative because it's your team, right? I don't consider myself Team Palestine. I consider myself Team Right and Wrong. And what would I want to deal with? You know, I'm sure the people that live in Israel are quite happy to be there, right? That they're on the winning end of a bad deal. But would I want to be living under occupation or a siege? Hell no. And I'm just impressed with how resolved the Palestinian people are in the face of all the things they suffer through. Right now being the worst among it. I'm just impressed. I don't know if I'd have the same level of resolve that they do. And they're staying put. That's why I mentioned about the H group being a philosophy, not a group of people. It's a mindset of resisting no matter what the circumstances, because there are different ways to deal with occupations, right? You can work like the Palestinian Authority wants to, which is sort of a conciliatory way of breaking things into zones of control, areas A, B, and C in the West Bank, as they're called. Or you can have a more militant approach, right? Everyone's got an idea. That's why they split politically, because they weren't different ideas of how to reach eventual autonomy and a separate, self-determination. And I don't know if either one's going to work. I don't know which one's the right one, so to say. I'm not condoning either of them or even the things that are done as a part of them. And I abhor violence in every format. When you're in a war, trust me, the last thing you ever want to see is conflict. It's horrible. But it's really sad when people get unalived. I'm very sympathetic to the hostages that have been taken from Israeli families. I'm sure that they're freaking out. And I think it's fair for them to be angry at the Israeli government, who, let's face it, they have not made a sincere effort both on the day of 10/7 to avoid civilian casualties, and they haven't done a great job in trying to deal with the exchange of their detainees, the ones that have been taken hostage, because they've been, in some cases, bombing places that they get unalive. I think like 50 or so hostages are no longer living because of the way they've sort of just decided to conduct their campaign, let's say it that way. But there are some that are still there. There's accusations now floating around that they're being horribly mistreated, that some that were released came back impregnated. And I don't know if they got pregnant before they left the day of that, or whether I don't know how many weeks they are or whatever it is. I don't know all the details. Again, no corroborating evidence other than people saying it. I don't know. I just don't know how you're supposed to know. And if you watch a pattern of lying over and over and over, how are you supposed to make sense of what's what? Oh, this time I swear this time it's accurate. How are you supposed to make sense of that? So that's why I asked for the video evidence or something else that's a little more substantive, that gives you a clearer idea that it's not just another delivery packaged in this little, whatever you want to call it, the Hasbro box they use. And I can tell you, after listening to people like Elon Levy and Mark Regev and these other spokespeople, they just lie through their teeth. And I would love to say something positive about Israel, say something like, I really want to commend them for fill in the blank. I'm just waiting for them to do the thing that's commendable. And when they do it, I'll say it. You know, if they make a peace deal and they give a little bit and I'll commend them for doing it. I swear. It would serve me a hell of a lot better. I mean, people in my family, because of what I've done, they don't talk much to me. They think I'm crazy. In the community where I live, there's a large, very, very affluent Jewish community that it would benefit me economically or at least socially to say much different things. And I'm not doing it to be a hero. I'm just doing it because, when you learn something and you don't speak about it, I mean, like someone said earlier, I'm an American voice, right? There probably aren't too many Americans that were fortunate enough to learn about this as I did. And it was totally by chance. But since I know a little bit more about it, I've read a lot of books, I've watched a lot of lectures and video on both sides, by the way. I mean, how many people that advocate for the Palestinians have read Alan Dershowitz's The Case for Israel? I don't know who. How many people who are pushing for the Palestinian side of things went to the pro-Israel rally in D.C.? I don't know anybody, but I did both of those things because I try to really understand what everybody's thinking and try to make heads and tails of it all. And the other cool thing about doing that is you learn things along the way that you otherwise wouldn't learn, and then you can, okay, I understand that now. That didn't make sense, but now I understand that. And I feel terrible for the actual hostages, the ones that are actually dealing with whatever their circumstances are. But the idea that they're suffering, the only evidence that I've seen about how they've been treated is what I've seen on video. I've made videos about this. And what that observation has been is that the older woman who was initially released, she was like the first captive that was released, she seemed not that traumatized. She seemed like she was like, they took care of me, they fed me, they took care of my feminine needs. They basically treated me with dignity. I think the last thing that the Israeli government wants is for any of the militants, or they call T words, being seen as compassionate humans, like having any sense of decency or, kindness towards others. They want to paint them as barbarians and savages and T words, and they don't want peace. They just want to hurt Jewish people, which I don't believe to be the case. In fact, I believe that based on their religious principles, as I understand them, that they're given directions. Now, they don't always follow them. And in the heat of battle, people do crazy stuff. Look at the U.S. and Vietnam. It's a great example. So I don't know exactly who did what, where, and how. They're told, I believe, not to hurt women or children and non-combatants like the elderly. That's off limits. I think they use the word haram, I think it is, for things that are off limits. Again, I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to anybody's religion. But I will say this. I do believe that there was the instructions were to not do those things. I don't know if they happened for sure. There've been a lot of allegations. I'm really trying to get to the bottom of them. But from what I've seen of the hostage releases, I've seen, I think, 4 different hostage releases that I've seen on video. One was the old woman I talked about. The second one was a young lady who was released, I think, 56 days into her captivity. She had hurt her arm, and they had done some medical work on her arm to make it better. And she was released into the Red Cross's custody, and she was in a vehicle, and somebody on camera came up and spoke with her. The H group was nowhere in the vicinity. They weren't like, standing over her with, you better say this. And so she said, in very, very, basic English, because obviously she speaks Hebrew. And she said, everything was good. They treated me good food, very kind is what she said. That was the word that came out of her mouth, very kind. I don't remember her name, and I apologize. I should know it. So then, about 6 weeks later, on Israeli television, on a recorded interview, I don't know if it was live or not, she said the exact opposite. She said it was her own personal Holocaust, is what she said. She said they tortured her, they were mean to her. They had her in a home with kids, like using them as human shields or whatever. Just all these allegations that were nowhere near what she said when she was first released. What are you supposed to do with that? Somebody said she was drugged up, and so therefore she couldn't think clearly. I mean, do you believe that argument? Do you believe the argument earlier today that the H group is so incompetent that they literally don't know how to orient their mortar tubes so they can fire outside their own territory, and therefore it's questionable how many civilians inside Gaza have been unalived? Do you buy that argument? That just seems odd to me. And again, some of these are going to be judgment calls. We're never going to know for sure who's right or wrong, but you have to kind of weigh things against, does this make sense or not? Does it make sense that a woman who said in a Red Cross vehicle, I was treated well, they were kind to me, I got fed well, everything was good, at least as best it could be under the circumstances, and then she comes back and completely changes her story. Now, what went through my head when I saw that, again, I could be wrong, is that she was given incentives and given instructions based on patriotism and, what they want people to believe. We can't say these people are okay. You have to do your duty to your country and come out, and you have to do what's right. And by the way, here's a little something for the effort, as Bill Murray said in Caddyshack. Hey, llama, if you remember that line. So I don't know, but it just seems that way. And so she came out and gave a completely different account of it, and that doesn't pass the smell test in my book. Maybe it does for you, I don't know. But in looking at this, I've been called every name in the book. I've been, and listen, it's not about, who gives a shit, right? I don't really care about all that. I'm just saying that disparaging somebody's character or trying to, paint them badly because of the message, it's all about the message to me. Forget about me. I could be shoved out of the way and someone else could take my place. Who cares? The point is that the message gets out and anybody who's aware of this speaks out as best we can, while at the same time being open to learning more, because we don't always get it right and we shouldn't be arrogant about that. So listen, I'm actually hopeful that the evidence that's sent to me does corroborate some of these allegations, because I've been looking for it as hard as I can, as much as I can, and I haven't found anything yet. I read the summary of a New York Times article which made a lot of allegations based on third-party accounts. I don't know what to do with that, because anybody can use that as a technique to allege things, and how are you going to, it's like a he said, she said thing. How are you supposed to... Sorry about that. The dog freaks out when anybody walks down the hallway of my building. So that's kind of how I see it. Like I said, if I don't know how more honest that anybody can be. If the script were flipped, I'd be critical of the Arab government doing what they're doing to the Jewish population that got displaced. I don't know how can that be supporting my narrative. My thing is against the power dynamics, not the parties. That's the point I try to raise, and I think that's trying to be fair. And sometimes, by the way, it's very controversial. I said some things about the Ukraine war to my family, and it just pissed them off so badly, man. And what I said was, if you don't know much about that war, I'm not going to get into it right now, but the narrative from the United States side was it was a completely unprovoked act of aggression, and all this guy wants to do is reestablish the former Soviet Union, and he's a territorial madman and all those things. And all I said to my family was, I'm surprised this didn't happen a lot sooner, because I do know the backstory, and I know what happened leading up to it. I know why President Putin decided to do what he did. And I know a lot more about the man than most people from the West do, because I do this sort of digging to try to find out, is the shit I'm being told true, or is it there's something else going on? So, yeah, Pup's giving me a time check. Yeah, I got to leave in about a couple minutes here. I know there's some guests that didn't get in. I apologize for that, Asma and Kristen. I do want to, just as an aside from a technical standpoint here on TikTok, sometimes when I try to bring people up, it'll like time out. I can't see your picture and it just doesn't really load. So the best thing to do if that keeps happening, if I try to bring you up once it happens, is to exit TikTok, like close the app, restart the app, and that usually fixes the problem when you come back in and request. So that's it. I'm just going to repeat my schedule. There's a message in my video page that has a little banner that gives you my schedule, but I'll tell you, I go live on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8 p.m. Eastern Time until 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And then I go live on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays from 12 noon to 2 p.m., sometimes longer like today if I have time. And that's my regular schedule. And then sometimes I do an impromptu one here and there, maybe sometime on the daytime, or I did one on Sunday that lasted 9 hours, which is crazy. Anyway, and I try to really listen to people. So if you're someone from the pro-Israeli side and you want to come up and talk, I'm not gonna call you names. I'm not going to disparage you. I'm not going to tell you you're a moron. And I also ask people in my chat not to do that. So I think a lot of people's chats are very one-sided. They just try to gang up on people, which I think is stupid. And it's, I went on a couple of pro-Israeli chats, if you haven't seen this, and they just treated me like absolute garbage. And I just kept quiet and just didn't try to respond. I just let them do it. And I recorded it. And then I put out a video about it. So if they put out videos about me, it's fair is fair, right? All's fair in love and war. It's fine by me. I have thick enough skin. But I would just say, think about what the people are saying first and why they're saying it. Questioning somebody. I got my service record questioned, and they said there's absolutely no way I served in the military. I highly doubt you ever served. I mean, come on, man. I wouldn't lie about something like that. That's pretty bad, right? So anyway, and by the way, I don't know who is getting paid. I know one person that is on the pro-Israeli side. I would never take money to say something about an issue. I just wouldn't do it. You could offer me $1 billion, literally a briefcase right now. And that's a lot of money, right? That's 10, 100, that's a lot of millions, right? I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. There's some things money just can't be involved in, right? And to get paid to take any side of an issue, in my mind, listen, you can do it. It's like a lawyer getting paid to be the prosecutor or the defense. You have to do your best. But that's, sometimes some things are just indefensible. And I believe the Israeli position on this is indefensible. And hopefully it'll change. That's the most important thing that matters out of all this, right? I just don't know how. So fingers crossed something can change. So I'll be back again tomorrow night, if not sooner. I just want to thank everybody for being here. It's always fun to have a conversation and have people listen in. And if it weren't for the audience, I couldn't do any of this. So thank you for supporting me. If you want to follow me, I'd appreciate that. I probably put out about 3 or 4 videos a week if you want to check them out. And I'm not the best editor. None of my stuff is very polished. It's just me. So please forgive me for that. But I really enjoyed today's conversation. I hope people did too. I will see you all tomorrow night. Take care, everybody.